Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. I'm Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee. Today I'm joined by Council Members Fry, Bender, and Glidden. I know Council Member Andrew Johnson will be right back, but this is a quorum of the committee right here with the four of us so we can conduct the business. Nice to see everybody here. I did want to let folks know that there is overflow seating in room 319 right across the hall where they can also watch the broadcast of the committee. That might be especially relevant if you're actually here for a later item on the agenda and you don't want to be here for the first item. We do have 3 public hearings that are scheduled for today. The first is on our carry-out bags and retail establishments ordinance. The second is on restructuring annual pollution control billing fees, an ordinance amendment there. And the third is an emergency shelters ordinance, but we're going to be continuing that item further to develop the language, but we noticed the public hearing, so we're going to open that public hearing later today and take that up too. Then we also have 2 consent items on our agenda, and I'm going to take the consent items first so that we can get those out of the way. And I'll read what they are, and if any committee members want to pull something off for discussion, we can certainly do that. The first is to grant an agreement with Mississippi Watershed Management Organization for summer interns. And the second consent item is authorizing a software license agreement with Don Bailey for use of the Energy Benchmarking Management System. Do any committee members want to pull any of those off for questions or discussion? Seeing none, then I'll move both of those consent items forward. All those in favor, please say aye. 4 and 5. The consent items. Are we good? Okay. All those in favor of those say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Any abstentions? Those motions carry them. Then we'll go back to our first item on the agenda, which is the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance. This is amending Title 11, Chapter 225 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances relating to health and sanitation. Before we open the public hearing, we're going to have a presentation. And our presenter today is Mr. Robin Garwood, who's policy aide for the Ward 2 office. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Gordon, committee members, as Cam said, I'm Robin Garwood. I will be giving the staff presentation on the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance. So why are we looking to address carry-out bags? There are 4 major reasons that we're doing this. 3 of them, the first 3 here, are what you might call downstream impacts. The impacts of litter, waste, impacts on recycling facilities. And then the 4th is what you might call upstream environmental impacts that come from carry-out bags. So going through these one at a time, all of these pictures were taken in Minneapolis by Minneapolis residents over the last month and a half, as were these. If you want to see more, we have quite a collection with the hashtag #TumbleBag. You can find them yourself. Plastic bags are all over the place in Minneapolis, and once they're in the environment, unless somebody picks them up, they never actually go away. They just become smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. In a recent cleanup of the Mississippi River, 1 mile of the Mississippi yielded 5 tons of trash in just over 2.5 hours. This is a nationwide problem. We have an estimated 50 to 80 million plastic bags that ended up as litter in the U.S. Back in 2002. They're also a significant portion of our waste stream. I don't know if everybody made it to the Bagnado exhibit at the Eco Experience building at the State Fair this last year, but the Bagnado represented the number of plastic bags Minnesotans throw away per day. Altogether, we throw away 87,000 tons of plastic bags in a year. And here in Minneapolis, most of those plastic bags end up in the garbage burner. And when you burn plastic, you end up creating all kinds of negative air quality impacts, VOCs, dioxins. So that makes this not just a waste issue, but an air quality issue and an environmental justice issue because, of course, that plume doesn't hit everywhere equally. It comes down in certain communities more than others. A very small percentage of the standard HDPE or high-density polyethylene bags that you get at the checkout line are ever recycled. You might hear from industry that it's a larger number than this, but that's because it's sort of a grouping together of a lot of different types of films, but the stuff that's made of HDPE, that's the standard thing that you get at the checkout line, less than 5% is recycled. By contrast, almost half of paper bags are recycled. We also know from case studies, including one that the Community Environmental Advisory Commission did, that when you address carry-out bags via a local ordinance, it does have an impact on waste reduction. They found that when they did a waste sort before they adopted their plastic bag ban, and then they did one afterwards, that they reduced the volume of plastic bags by 58% or 418 tons. And the Solid Waste Planning and Program Management Director, Timothy Kroll, also put a little anecdote in his email that single-use grocery bags are now as rare as Packers jerseys at a Vikings game. And I don't think that he was talking about when we're playing Green Bay. Plastic bags also have a pernicious impact on our recycling facilities. They wrap themselves around the single sort machines and have to be cut off by hand. When they are cut off by hand, our understanding is that they become part of the residuals, so they are not recycled, they end up being thrown away. So that's the downstream impacts of bags. Bags also have an upstream impact, and that's where actually paper bags look worse. So all bags require energy and create waste, cause air and water pollution when they are manufactured. Paper bags actually create more of that upstream impact, 64 pounds of greenhouse gas emissions and 31 pounds of water pollution per 10,000 uses. The uses is not a number of bags, it's a number of times bags get used, so it's a little bit less than 10,000 bags. Whereas plastic carryout bags create 18 pounds of GHGs and 2 pounds of water pollution. So you can see that though plastic bags are very problematic on the back end, paper bags are actually worse at the front end. So we've all been asked the question, paper or plastic, and of course, it's a trick question because the answer is neither. We should be bringing our own. And that's what this ordinance seeks to do. It seeks to incentivize Minneapolis consumers to bring our own bags. The proposal has two basic parts. On plastic bags, we would prohibit the provision of plastic carryout bags at the sort of checkout counter, the end of the buying something process, with a set of exemptions. These exemptions include plastic bags that are specifically designed to be reusable, that are about twice as thick as the standard bag that you get, or 4 mils. Produce bags and other bags that come into direct contact with food. Specialized bags like for dry cleaning, newspapers, door hanger bags, that kind of thing, and bags used for protecting the public health in the provision of carry-out food. The proposal for paper and compostable plastic and reusable bags is to give retailers two options, essentially. The first would be to charge consumers 5 cents per bag. They would not be compelled by this ordinance to charge that fee of consumers who are on SNAP, EBT, WIC, any of the food assistance programs in Minnesota, or they could opt to give their consumers a credit of 10 cents per reusable bag they bring with them. This is something where Minneapolis is actually not out in front on this. A lot of other communities in the United States have taken action on carryout bags. Over 160 cities. The entire state of Hawaii has banned the use of carry-out plastic bags. And also many countries around the world have taken this action. So Kenya, Rwanda, you can read it yourself, up to and including China. Just to give you an idea of the geographic scope of where those communities are in the U.S., this is a map of all of the cities that have taken an action on carry-out bags. In terms of implementation and enforcement of this ordinance, we have proposed the effective date for Earth Day of next year, April 22nd. This is part of a broader discussion that we're having about waste, and it's part of this zero waste policy plan initiative that the council has authorized and the mayor's office is working on. Because that process, we hope, is going to create some new ways of addressing issues like this, we have authorized multiple departments to enforce this ordinance, including the Solid Waste and Recycling Division of Public Works, the Licensing and Consumer Services Division of CPED, the Health Department and Regulatory Services, and Councilmember Gordon has a staff direction that he will be moving with today's action for those 4 departments to come back to this committee at the end of next January, no later than the end of next January, with some recommendations for implementation and enforcement. We have done considerable community engagement on this concept. In fact, it started with engaging our Community Environmental Advisory Commission. Councilmember Gordon asked them to do some research into best practices from other cities around the country and come up with a set of recommendations. And this ordinance is based on those recommendations that we received from SEAC. We've also had a lot of conversations with businesses about this. So we've met with the licensing department's business advisory group a couple of times last year and this year. We've met with the plastic bag, paper bag, and grocery industry lobbyists. We have shared the draft ordinance in early January of this year and had a specific stakeholder meeting for small business owners who speak Somali or Spanish. As well, we've heard from the health department that they've sent this out through their normal channels to the folks that they inspect. We have a large and growing list of organizations who have supported this idea. You can read them for yourselves, but we also, I think, have a lot of folks here to speak in favor of this today. So with that said, I'll stand for questions. I'll also note that we have folks from the relevant city departments here if there are specific questions about their work in terms of this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that report. I think we may have a question from Councilmember Bender. And you know, I think I didn't actually introduce our special guests yet either. So maybe just before you...
I can do that.
Okay, why don't you introduce them for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, so before I ask my question, just wanted to thank the 4th grade class that we have with us from Whittier Elementary School. Thank you so much for coming here today, kids, and we were welcome back at City Hall anytime. For Mr. Garwood, I wanted to go back to the question, the slide about exemptions.
Sure.
And I wondered if you could, oops, sorry, maybe it was, yes,
this one?
Yeah. Could you talk more about the fees and the credit piece,
Yeah.
and what is the intended purpose of that, and how did you arrive at these amounts? And then, right, so I guess that covers it.
Sure. So the point, again, is to incentivize consumers in Minneapolis to bring their own bags with them. We definitely want to address all of the effects that we're having from paper or from plastic bags, but we don't necessarily just want to push consumers to paper because, again, they have those life cycle impacts on the upfront side. So the idea is to have this pass-through fee that would be kept by the retailer of 5 cents. That would be just enough, was the hope, to get consumers to think, do I really, I have to pay that fee if I want that bag. Do I really want that bag? Maybe I should bring my own with me instead. This number actually came from the Community Environmental Advisory Commission, was their recommendation. We have also heard that there are some retail establishments that are currently offering this 10-cent credit. I believe Whole Foods does that. A lot of the co-ops do that. They decided that that was their way of trying to get consumers to change behavior. And so after some conversation with them, some conversation between the co-authors, it was decided to allow them to have that option as well.
Maybe I'll just note, because this is actually an issue that myself and the other co-author discussed quite a bit about these 2 alternatives. We also heard from some retail establishments that they seem to prefer this rather than having to collect the fee. Also, there was a sense that if a retailer wanted to bear more of the costs or more of the burden and not pass that on to customers, this would give them an alternative to do that. There were concerns that, though from others, and this credit for the reusable bag was not part of the original recommendation from SEAC, and there was a concern that the 5-cent fee is more of an incentive actually for people to make a change in their shopping habits, but this would give at least some flexibility and some discretion for the retailer. And I see another question from Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Garwood. Given that the upfront costs to the environment for paper are several times that of plastic, how can we make sure that we're simply not trading Peter for Paul, and that the ultimate output ends up being greater than before the ban?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Fry, I think Seattle and other places that have enacted policies like this provide us with a roadmap of what actually does end up happening.
Right.
They have seen waste reduction of the plastic bags in the waste stream. Again, you know, everything has an environmental impact, but a paper bag that ends up within the litter stream out in the environment at some point will become something that's bioavailable, something that's just part of the environment again. A plastic bag that gets loose out into one of our water bodies and you know, evades the folks doing the great sort of Earth Day cleanups, it is always going to be there. That plastic is always going to be there. And you know, we've heard from folks that this is a great and growing problem. Plastic bags is a portion of that problem. It's not the full thing, but we know now that there's about as much plastic in the oceans as fish. It's something that we have to address.
So there's absolutely no argument on the back end at all. I agree with you. Obviously, paper is compostable. It does not add to the environmental problems the plastic does on the back end. However, on the front end was my question. And so how are we certain that we're not creating more of an environmental negative on the front end? Do we have statistics from that, from Seattle and from some of the other cities?
Through the chair, council member, I don't have those statistics in front of me right now. I think this goes to why it is as important as it is to find a way to disincentivize paper bags as well, to actually really try to drive folks towards using our own bags, trying to change our habits, build new habits so that when we come to a place and we want to buy something, we're already prepared with something to take it away with us.
Yeah.
And so that's, I mean, basically you're speaking to why the fee and the incentive, the credit is as important as it is as a piece of this ordinance. Because we really don't want to drive people from plastic to paper. We want to drive people from both to bringing their own bags.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I'm just thinking about what are the other externalities that could possibly be associated with the change. And you know, have you done any research also with just multiple uses? You know, I presently use plastic bags for cat litter. Following, I mean, you try and limit your use in the actual grocery store, but for those that you do take home, you try and have multiple uses so that you're expanding the life. Are there any statistics from some of those other cities showing like an uptick in trash bag sales, given that there's no mechanism to get the Lund's grocery bag?
So I think that's where the Seattle experience is instructive. They actually, when they did that waste sort, it was for all plastic bags in their waste stream. What they've found is that it actually reduced the total amount of plastic bag in the waste stream.
That's helpful.
Councilmember Gleason.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted a little bit more on kind of just a couple big picture things. One is, I think from your earlier slides, talked about the large number of cities that have taken some kind of an action, but as I understand it, there's a lot of different varieties of the action, and you kind of refer to the fact that some cities have bans and some cities use a fee methodology for trying to change behavior. So I'd like a little bit more on why this methodology was chosen with the ban on the plastic instead of a fee-based approach. So wanted a little on everything or whatever. So just a little bit more on that. And then I also wanted you to speak a little bit more to the exemptions. So there's, kind of quite a few exemptions that are listed, many that are there because of bags that would touch food type items of some sort, or be there because of a moisture type issue, or protecting, I think there was one that was protecting fine paper, things like this. And so if you could maybe talk a little bit more about how that list was put together and what you think will be the impact, knowing that you've got quite a few exemptions in here.
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Glidden, to your first question about the other jurisdictions and how the particular proposal was arrived at, that's actually something that I think the SEAC recommendation document, which was linked to today's agenda, could help answer. They did a lot of research into the effectiveness of the various policies in different cities. So they looked a lot at the Washington D.C. model, which is a fee on both. They looked at the Seattle model, which is a ban on plastic and a fee on paper. We asked SEAC to look at this issue without any kind of prejudgment about where we were hoping to end up, and the recommendations that we received back from them were to do the ban on plastic and the fee on paper. And again, they actually lay out their rationale fairly well in that document that they provided to us and that we've linked to the agenda. On the exemptions question, some of this was definitely in their recommendations, and then some of it came from our conversations with city staff. So, for instance, the bags used for takeout food, that's something that we heard from the health department that was pretty important to them, that we have the capacity for people to continue to provide those because of the sort of disease problems that you can end up with. I would say that it's fairly common for these kinds of ordinances to exempt certain classes and types of plastic bags based on those particular uses essentially it's will there be something that is damaged that comes from not having this bag that we can really expect in an ongoing way. So that's sort of the purpose of the newspaper bag, for instance, is to make it so that the newspaper isn't unreadable by the time you get it out. Again, a lot of these exemptions also came from the SEAC recommendations, so that would be a document to review.
And I'll just note that some of the exemptions also came up through the discussions that we had with businesses. Once we sent out the ordinance to businesses, there were a number of business associations that wanted some conversations and some meetings, and we had those. And so some of it was fine-tuning the ordinance to try to address some of those needs. You mentioned the fine art paper. And that was definitely something that came up. It's something that they don't really package when they're selling it. People buy a limited number of sheets, and we decided to make an exemption there to kind of make things easier. We also heard at some of the meetings, though, that maybe there were too many exemptions, and some people were concerned, and they were looking forward to, in the future, maybe reviewing those exemptions as time goes by.
Okay.
And
just one more question. I just want to double check, because I have this letter. Is there something different than this one-page letter? Because you kind of referred to a lot of things that SEAC helped you work through.
Through the chair, Councilmember Glidden, yes. That's the SEAC communication about the ordinance and about their support for the ordinance. They actually also gave us their set of recommendations, and I believe it's linked to the agenda for today's meeting.
I can also send you those two documents. There's one report, and then there was an appendices to it. And I know I know Andrew was here from SEAC too, and he could maybe speak to those issues also if he wanted to. Somebody from SEAC, maybe Anna. Well, there might be some specific questions about the SEAC recommendations, and so I just wanted my colleagues to know that you're here, and if you want them to specifically answer about that, they're available to do that. Okay, we've got a couple more questioners, and I know we have lots of people eager to get started on the public hearing too, so I'll try not to talk too much between every question. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious on a couple of things with what Austin experienced. I know they recently got a report back to their Zero Waste Committee, I believe, 2 years after their bag ban was implemented, and they found what they said was mixed success because they saw the number of HDPE bags drastically reduced, but the number of PP woven bags, the polypropylene, I believe is the term, I could be wrong on the term, but increased and actually offset the number of HDPE bags being reduced. Is there any concern about that here? And then generally just on the environmental footprint issue, have we tried to quantify, especially, I know reusable bags in the St. Louis Park study, they showed if HDPE bags are used at a 40% rate, which I think is probably fair to expect. I know I use all of mine for trash liners, that you'd have to reuse a cotton bag 173 times in order to offset the environmental cost. When we factor everything here in terms of retailers who are going to be giving away paper bags as long as they implement this incentive program, and those being 4 times more environmentally costly than plastic bags, when we account for what we've seen in Austin in terms of the increase of polypropylene bags in the waste stream offsetting the HDPE bags, and then the environmental cost of cotton in terms of the energy consumption. How do we feel our environmental footprint is actually going to grow, and by how much more? And obviously that then seems to me to be a question of, for this committee, the trade-off between litter and environmental footprint, and that perhaps it's worth it, or it could be potentially to increase the environmental footprint in order to reduce litter, would seem to be the issue that we're wrestling with. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Through the chair, council member. Actually, we had a very good suggestion from our solid waste and recycling staff. If you turn to 225.910, the definition section of the definition of reusable bag. Prior to this, we had mostly just said that we were going to exempt bags over 4 mils in thickness. One of the things that Austin has definitely shown us is that some of the retailers will just go above whatever that thickness limit is and just use a thicker plastic bag. This has also been an issue in Chicago, where I believe their limit is actually lower than 4 mils, so it was even easier for retailers to just give people a slightly thicker bag. What we heard from solid waste and recycling was actually this great idea about defining reusable bag as something that is designed for multiple uses. It's actually number 2 there under reusable bag, is specifically designed and manufactured for multiple reuses over a period of time and a minimum lifetime use of 75 uses. So that's one of the ways that we've tried to get away from the Austin problem. I think that we have definitely heard from folks, especially the plastic bag lobby, that reusable bags are actually significantly worse than the disposable plastic bags. I personally don't buy it. I don't think that we're finding large numbers of reusable bags out in the litter stream. I also think that it's entirely possible for people to, over the lifetime of a bag, use it more than the 175 times if it is actually designed to be used that way. I know that I myself, use the same bag that has my bike lock and all my other stuff in it for most of the shopping that I do. I just put everything in that bag. I've probably used it 400, 500 times now. So I think it's entirely possible to actually shift behavior in a more environmentally friendly direction. Will this absolutely, without question, have no impact on getting people to take more paper bags? I don't think that anybody can say that, but I do think that on balance it does pencil out in a more environmentally friendly direction.
Thank you. And I didn't note earlier that we've been joined by Councilmember Cano, and also Councilmember Warsami's as co-author of this ordinance is also in the meeting. And Councilmember Cano has a question, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's more of a comment as I'm noticing our conversations here and reflecting on my own cultural upbringing as it relates to the environment and some of these issues. So first, I want to acknowledge that we do have a letter of support for this ban from the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors Group, and the City of Minneapolis has a special relationship with that group in terms of supporting and uplifting the voices of American Indian people in Minneapolis. And as the representative for the largest concentration of American Indian families in the city, I'm very proud to see this letter. And I was an early supporter of the ban on plastic bags publicly months ago. I still am 100% behind this initiative today. I did want to say that as we move forward, I see here we have a staff direction that we'll probably likely talk about in a little bit regarding our staff coming back to us with ideas about implementation and sort of the programming and how we're going to do this. I would love to see a cultural component to that. And I speak about that because growing up in a Mexican family and being Mexican, we always had reusable bags that we would use to take to the grocery stores. And it's a common practice in small towns in Mexico all over the place. It's an ancestral tradition of carrying things. We've been carrying things for a long time, way before plastic bags were even invented. So I think sometimes we make our life a little bit more difficult than it actually has to be. And so I'm proud to be supporting this plastic bag ban. I hope we can take take the initiative today and move it forward. And I also met with staff from Little Earth last week and from and students at Center School, both in the 9th Ward. And I know some of those folks are here today, and they're also very supportive of the ban on plastic bags. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, those voices are being heard today, and we're happy that you're here, and I'm happy to be supporting this initiative.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions. So thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm sure you'll be available later if needed. I'm going to open the public hearing now, and trying to limit discussion to 3 minutes each. We have a timer over there. Usually people can cover most of their points in about 2 minutes, and so by 3 minutes they've probably said everything. So we'll have the timer up there. If you need to go a little bit further, that's fine, but I might start asking you to wrap it up or cut things off. I did ask somebody from the MPCA to come today and speak, and I think Madeline is here, so if you can come up, and if you think 3 minutes isn't quite enough, we can give you a little more time if you want, because I asked you to come in and speak.
That would be great. It
Welcome.
might take just a moment or two, but beyond 3 minutes.
Okay, so maybe we won't start the timer right off the bat, and we'll do that for the next. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks very much. Councilmember Gordon, Chair, and council members, thanks very much. My name is Madeline Chochi, and I'm here today representing the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, where I work as a waste and pollution prevention specialist, developing research and programs and policy. The MPCA recently released a white paper that is directly relevant to this discussion that you're having, titled Product Bans and Restrictions, a Guide for Local Policymakers. It was created in part because the MPCA was getting questions from cities in Minnesota in terms of guidance about how to and whether to enact this kind of ordinance. The white paper is now available online. You can just Google MPCA product bans, and my comments today are largely taken from that paper. I welcome everybody to review it prior to enacting the final ordinance, and I'm happy beyond this hearing to offer any answers to questions that I can. So I want to share first some of what we learned in writing that paper, and I'll start basically where we ended. One of the things we concluded in doing the research was that the key to good policy making in this arena is to ensure that the desired public outcomes, and you've clearly defined your purpose in your proposal, actually result from the enacted policy the way that it's written. And in the case of plastic bags, it seems very simple, but it has proven actually quite difficult to match the outcomes with the policy across the country. Many have passed, as you know, and some have been repealed. Very few have been evaluated. Recently, the city of St. Louis Park went through a very rigorous consideration of such a policy and decided to table it. I want to make clear that the PCA does not have a stance on this particular policy or whether you should or should not pass a policy. However, because we were asked for guidance from several communities, we did this research and came to this recommendation that what we think would provide a really solid policy approach would be to emphasize reuse, as this policy does, beyond the single-use bags, and doing that through a fee on both paper and plastic bags, in part because of the life cycle impacts of both of those single-use bags. So there's no suggestion, if a fee is put on both types of bags, there's no suggestion that one is better or worse for the environment. We know that paper does have a larger footprint. That is clear. But a fee on both conveys that information that both are poor for the environment. This type of approach, while incentivizing reuse overall, also still allows citizens the chance to get a plastic or a paper bag based on which they will reuse or recycle most readily. And I think that's an important piece, because if I asked people in this room how they used plastic or paper bags in their lives, people would all have a different way that they use them. Many people would be using them as trash bin liners or pet waste collectors. Other people have reasons that they prefer having paper bags because they reuse those. Human behavior is tricky. And so it's hard to predict how they're going to use them. We also highly recommend that the ordinance include specifications in the ordinance language for evaluation and reporting, because it's been hard for communities to get information about whether their ordinances have actually had the impacts they hope it would. We think it's really important at the outset to describe what kind of reporting you might need. Do you need to make plans to look at litter to see if it's really gone down, and if so, by how much? Do you need to talk to retailers and get reporting to find out if paper bag use is up or it's down, or reusable bag use and how much it's increased? These would also allow you to start to look at the life cycle impacts of the ordinance. So we think it's important to specify that up front. So a couple of points have already been raised today, and I appreciate the intense conversation that you're having about this. Mr. Garwood brought up already the life cycle impacts of both paper and plastic, and that it is clear from the LCAs that paper has a much larger footprint than plastic. Paper is more intensive to produce, takes more material, more energy, and ultimately more fossil fuels. It's counterintuitive, but it does seem to be true. We've seen it over and over in several studies. The proposal that is been drafted here seems to allow for paper bags to be provided for free to customers, as long as the retailer is offering a 10-cent rebate on reusable bags. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay. Again, it's been mentioned already, but it has been found repeatedly that fees are a better incentive for behavior change than incentives. People, humans, psychologically respond to the fees as a bigger driver, which is one of the reasons why the PCA's recommended policy is to put a fee on both kinds of bags. As written, it seems like quite possible that what would happen here would be an increase in paper bags because they could be offered for free, whereas plastic bags would be banned. So it seems like it would be a pretty easy choice in the store if you need a bag. If it were the case that the paper bags were used over the plastic, that would be a net life cycle impact-wise, that would be a net increase in life cycle impacts, not a decrease as the goal of the ordinance suggests. In Portland, where they banned plastic bags and allowed paper, they saw a 300% increase in reusable bags, which was great, and a 500% increase in paper bags. Right. Placing the emphasis on reuse is really, really important. And again, one of the reasons that we recommend the approach that we do is because of the opening for people to use the bags as they reuse the bags as they can. So the reuse, this is a quote from one of the environmental studies that we accessed. It's a government study. It's not an industry-sponsored study in any way. The reuse of conventional and other lightweight carrier bags for shopping and or as bin liners, so the reuse of these as shopping bags or bin liners is pivotal to their environmental performance. And reuse as bin liners, trash can liners, produces greater benefits than recycling bags. So the reuse, that's why it's reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Because the reuse has the larger impacts, right? So that reuse of a single plastic bag cuts its impact in half. And you would want to do everything you can to allow that reuse to happen, I think. Because otherwise it's quite possible that people will be out needing to buy new trash bags for their bin liners if they can't access a plastic bag. There is some evidence that that's what happened in Ireland. So those new trash bags, they need to be manufactured. They tend to be thicker plastic. They tend to be more plastic. So that would just be something to be watching out for. as a possible unintended consequence. It's already been mentioned that in Austin, Texas, they did do a little bit of evaluation, and they found that they, pound for pound, ended up with as many plastic bags in their recycling facilities as they had before. So again, one of the purposes that is put forth in this proposed ordinance is to help the facilities, the recycling facilities, and I think we would just want to be careful to make sure that that was, again, one of the outcomes that you were seeing. Reuse is important. I heard somebody mention about the canvas bag, and it's true. Reused bags have an environmental benefit if they are reused. If someone doesn't, if you use a reusable bag once and you throw it away, that's more environmental harm. You don't want to do that. You do need to reuse a canvas bag, probably well over 100 times actually, to get an environmental benefit. Some people will do that and track their bags, and some people won't. But a polypropylene bag only needs to be used about 11 times before there's an environmental win. So it very much depends on the material that's at use. All right, and then I just want to say one last word about litter, which is that there's very little information about litter out there. And I know that plastic bags billow. They're very obvious out in the community. Without an audit, we don't know how much litter the plastic bags make up. In Texas, and this may be the only time I turn to Texas for information, but because Minnesota and a national litter or national litter data doesn't exist. But in Texas, they did do a very thorough study in 2013. They looked at 200 sites around the state and sampled from them of all visible litter items. What they found is that 2% of their litter was from retail plastic bags, 2%, while over 18% was beverage containers, tops of cups, and straws. Just those three things, 18%. And so one of the questions that we pose in our white paper is simply, if your goal is, in this case, litter, are you looking at all of your policy options for best tackling that particular issue? And that's one of the questions that we ask. So I think I will wrap it up there. In the interest of time, you've been very generous. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do see a question. Councilmember Fry or Councilmember Bender? Oh, Councilmember Johnson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank you for your comments. I will bring this up later after the public hearing, but I agree with you. I think that we're ultimately going to, the way that this is structured right now, we have some opportunities to actually improve the outcome in terms of reducing litter and ultimately have a smaller environmental footprint than the way that this is currently structured. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have one question. I was very intrigued by the idea of doing the study, maybe collecting some data beforehand and reviewing it after the ordinance has been in effect for a certain amount of time. Do you think that's something that the MPCA would like to participate in or perhaps conduct on our behalf?
I can't speak to our ability to conduct it on your behalf here, but we'd be certainly open to having conversations about that.
Excellent. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In talking with folks today, I understand there may be a proposal out there to take what these fees that were originally going to be passed on to the consumers, the sort of incentive piece, and rather than do that, collect it as the city. And so I wanted to ask you about this because it seems to me that one of the important points you just made about this 5-cent and 10-cent give back to the consumer, that there's a behavioral change component of that.
Very much.
And that sounds very important to this overall package. So I just wondered if you could speak to that and what those, that kind of option does for the overall policy. You covered it, but I just want to really understand it.
Yep, I wish I had good research to share with you. What I do know is that in general, in psychological studies, in social psychological studies, and in policy studies, we have seen, and the results show, that the taxes and fees have a disproportionate impact on people's behavior choices over incentives, over rebates, that sort of thing. We are hardwired apparently to avoid loss. And that's how taxes and fees are registered. And that's really the explanation for why it happens that way. I know that in Washington, D.C., their original implementation was a 5-cent, I think it was a 5-cent fee. And a penny of that went directly to an environmental fund for improving the Potomac River area in Washington, D.C., which was one of the ways that they got buy-in from the community for a fee that might have otherwise been unpalatable publicly. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions.
All right, Mr. Chair,
Appreciate
Council, thank you.
So for the rest of you now, I'm going to be using the timer for 3 minutes. And I'm going to, I guess, just go through the list as people have signed up. And the next person on the list is Tom Vogel, followed by Andrew Murray. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Tom Vogel. Good afternoon. I represent Seward Community Cooperative. We operate 2 full-service grocery stores in Minneapolis, as well as a retail cafe. We support council members Gordon and Warsami's ordinance to ban retailers from distributing non-compostable plastic bags. Several years ago, after weighing the environmental and fiscal costs, Seward Co-op stopped providing plastic bags upon checkout. The majority of customers responded positively. We encourage other retailers to implement a credit to shoppers who bring their own reusable bags. For us, this has resulted in a reduced use of bags as well as an overall savings. Seward Co-op's mission is to sustain a healthy community with positive environmental impacts, and this ordinance will support that aim while reducing litter, waste, and the impacts on recycling facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Andrew Murray, followed by Julia Karan. Julia. Welcome.
Thank you. Council members, I'm Andrew Murray. I'm the Vice Chair of SEAC currently and a resident of Ward 12. I'm here speaking on behalf of both the paper that you guys have received in your agenda about the suggestions we gave you about the bag ban, as well as the ordinance, my approval of it. This ordinance was not the easiest thing to put together. That list that we gave you was when we went through 12 cities, very detailed, looking at how this ban would both best help the city of Minneapolis and both help just trash use in general. Zero waste policy is something that the City Council has picked up as a very important thing. This is a big step in moving forward with that. Following the polystyrene ban of last year, everything kind of that comes forward with this is just reducing waste for the city. It's good for the city because we're a city that prides ourselves on our parks, our lakes, and when we talk about waste, as Robin's presentation showed us, it's what we see most. We see these plastic bags, we see this waste that collects around our city. It's actually funny, I was just told today that paper bags are actually a very Minnesotan thing. Paper bags were created in 1912 in St. Paul. Yes, I know it's St. Paul, but it was still a Minnesotan idea to do paper bags in this state. What was the last one? And then the big argument has always been on the kind of the 4 R's of waste, which is reduce, reuse, and then recycle. I know banning plastic bags does come with some downsides. The one thing is, number one is always to reduce. This is a simple thing. It reduces plastic bags in our city. From there, we can take further steps to reduce, increase recycling and increase reuse of other things around our city. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Julia Curran, welcome.
Hi, I'm Julia Curran. I live in Ward 7, Precinct 9. And I'm just speaking as a citizen who has always been somebody bringing a reusable bag. I'm very much in support of having a ban and adding these fees in for single use or maybe one extra use bags. I've seen the climate shift from when I was a teenager and buying things on my own for the first time, where cashiers would try and force me to take a bag, tell me they think I was shoplifting otherwise, even though I had a receipt. Just weird pushback at that point. And it's shifted maybe 5-10 years ago. I was getting compliments on my bags that I would bring, and now it's just accepted. I have friends who weren't for years and years, and they're starting to, and I feel like part of the way that we see the culture shift is both from the bottom down or bottom up. People like me who tend to be, sort of annoying and bringing their own things and pushing other people to do it, but trying to be nice about it. But then also when we realize on a societal level that it's a problem, having it come from the top down and trying to create incentives on both sides to get us towards a more sustainable way of living. And I am the daughter of a father born in 1920 in Minneapolis, and growing up without plastic bags, without paper bags. It's not something that we can't do. It's just something that we have to relearn how to do. And I think that this proposal will help incentivize and help show us and push us to be more creative in figuring out how we do that again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next is Thomas, and I think it's Kraus. You can.
Thomas Kraus, you got it. Thank you so much for inviting us and part of the public here to speak today and for putting this proposition forward. I just want to say I'm here representing Happy Earth Cleaning as the manager. Just 6 months ago, we started a plastic bag recycling program for all of our customers and all of our employees, and the response has been absolutely tremendous. It's been through the roof. We have more and more customers asking, hey, you guys still taking plastic bags away? We probably we don't actually use more plastic garbage bags to collect them in, but we could probably fill at least one of those every single week. So we're talking about hundreds, possibly even thousands of bags every single week, and that's from less than 200 homes between our full clientele and all of our employees. We're thinking of all the homes that are in this city. I know Minneapolis is just kind of one city in this state of ours, but it's very important to try to do the things that we can right here. And as long as we as a company and other concerned citizens and organizations are going to be here to stand about this type of thing, we might as well do what we can to mitigate it now so we can spend our activist efforts doing other things like getting litter out of the streets of Lynn Lake and other cool stuff like that. So thank you so much for putting this forward, and I hope we can do the right thing with this.
Thank you very much. Next is Felicity Britton.
Thank you, Chairman Gordon and council members. My name is Felicity Britton. I'm a member of Linden Hills Power and Light, and we support this proposed ordinance. Do we need a plastic bag ban? The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. More recycling of plastic bags is not the answer. California legislated recycling plastic bags, and the results were dismal. So people can tell you, oh, we just need, to recycle them. It still doesn't work. When it's even the law, still only about 5% of plastic bags were recycled. No one really wants to recycle the plastic bags. It costs more to recycle them than to make them from virgin materials. And so then if they're not made into more plastic bags, they're downcycled into something that can't be recycled ever again. They're made of natural gas and petroleum. The natural gas is increasingly being extracted by fracking, which I think we can all agree is controversial at best. Opponents will say that plastic bags make up a minuscule fraction of the waste stream. That's because they weigh nothing. So are we doing by weight, by volume, by what? When you look at the impact of them when they're left out in the environment and going into our oceans and into the litter all around our cities, their impact is oversized, not minuscule. Plastic bag industry lobbyists like to call the fee for paper bags a tax, but if I buy an apple for 50 cents, I don't call it my apple tax. I call it paying for something that I am buying. So if I forget my reusable bag, other cities have found that grocery prices actually go down when they're not having to pay for all these paper bags because now the consumer is paying for them. So I'm able to offset it through reduced grocery spending. If I remember my reusable bag, then I'm definitely winning. Linden Hills Power and Light is starting a reusable bag sewing co-op. We invite you all to come join our little co-op of people sewing reusable bags. They'll be available free at shopping nodes, and it's a boomerang bag idea. So you use them if you've forgotten your own reusable one, you left it in the car or you left it at home, you just grab one of ours, you use it, next time you're at the store, you just drop it back in the box. If you don't want it, if you want to keep it, keep it. This cotton bags costing, 131 times the same, using a plastic bag. That's cherry picking statistics. So if you look at those same statistics, they pick cotton because it has a horrible environmental impact. If you look at other types of reusable bags, the actual use is as little as 4 times. So if I was cherry picking the statistics, I would go for something like the LDPE or the PP bags or something else so I can say, oh, it's 4 times or 11 times, not 131. Don't use cotton. Easy answer. Plastic bags cost millions of dollars per year to clean up. They clog stormwater drains and cause flooding. They harm wildlife. We need to deal with them now and not wait. Dealing with our waste is the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way to combat climate change. We're committed to being a zero waste city here in Minneapolis. Let's prove it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker signed up is Steve Eberly. Oh.
Welcome. Council members, my name is Steve Eberly. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm a resident of Minneapolis and also a board member at Linden Hills Power and Light. Speaking of my personal experience, I happened to live in the country of Ireland in 2001 and 2002, and I recall how many bags were scattered all over the countryside of that country, stuck into hedgerows, in the harbors, etc. And it was really not a very hard decision for that country to enact this sort of a ban. So I encourage you to do the same thing. I am currently today dressed as the bag monster, and the bag monster represents the average number of bags a typical shopper uses each year. I think it's nearly 500 bags. It's quite a spectacle, as you can see. Thank you very much. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much for being here. Next is Gretchen Spear. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gordon and committee members. My name is Gretchen Spear. I'm with the American Forest and Paper Association. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., but I'm also a Minneapolis resident in Ward 13. So on behalf of AF&PA and the Renewable Bag Council, we appreciate the opportunity to share perspective on this ordinance that we share. AF&PA and the Renewable Bag Council share the same goals in looking towards reducing waste in both the residential and commercial waste streams. However, we do find an issue with the charging of 5 cents for the paper bags, is that government-imposed product taxes increase costs for consumers and create distortions in the free flow of recoverable commodities. The bag tax unfairly targets paper products, implying that we're part of the environmental problem rather than the solution. Paper products are commonly made with recycled content, that's part of the ordinance, which is the 40% post-consumer recycled content. As for the paper bag, that our industry consistently has achieved an overall high recovery rate. In 2014, 65.4% of all the paper consumed in the U.S. was recovered for recycling. Now, one of the numbers that was used for paper bags that were recovered for recycling was 49%. That's an EPA number from 2009. We believe that number is considerably larger than that because of the increase of single stream or single sort recycling programs through the United States. And also in addition with that is that now across the U.S., 94% of consumers have access to residential recycling. And as part of that, paper products, especially paper bags, are a part of that. So one of the things that I also wanted to touch on is why we oppose, AF&PA and the Renewable Bag Council members oppose this ordinance, is that consumers should have a choice whether it's paper or plastic bags. I'm not going to be here saying that plastic bags are horrible, but I do believe, and AF&PA believes, that consumers should have a choice. Paper bags are not part of the litter issue, is that they are highly recyclable, they're made of recycled content, and is now part of the Minneapolis residential compost program. They're part of the compost program that we as residents can put those paper bags in as part of our composting stream. So one other item I wanted to address was there was a lot of talk about the impact of the life cycle impact that paper does have. Yes, the paper industry is an energy intensive industry, just as many other industries are. However, voluntarily in 2011, the paper industry brought forth a set of 6 voluntary sustainability goals. One of those is forestry. That one of the pictures that was shown on the staff's presentation had to do with clear cutting. We have a very robust program of sustainably forest managed programs. So I believe my time is up, but I think the council and committee should really take a look at the impact that this will have on both paper and plastic, and listen to some of the other folks who are coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. It's good to hear your perspective. Next is Ann Laughlin.
Thank you, Chair Gordon and council members. Ann Laughlin, I'm 12th Ward, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis. In addition to the adverse environmental impacts of plastic bags that have already been well documented here, such as the litter and the greenhouse gas emissions, air and water pollution, and the recycling difficulties, plastic bags are a particular concern to the Audubon Society because of the dangers they present to birds and other wildlife, and that really hasn't been mentioned here very thoroughly. Birds inadvertently feed on bags and with fatal results. And many plastic bags eventually wash into our lakes and rivers and make their way into the ocean, where they join those giant garbage areas the drifting garbage patches that spread over huge areas of the sea. And these floating bags tend to inflate when they're out there in those garbage patches. And so many ocean birds, and along with sea turtles, marine mammals, other animals, when the bags billow up, they think that they're jellyfish or squid, and then they go to eat them, clog up their intestines, they starve to death, and they're full of plastic. And in addition, birds and other wildlife can also get entangled in the bags just in our parks. So plastic and paper require fossil fuels. The more fossil fuels that we use, the more habitat we destruct. And using less plastic and paper would save energy, and as a result could help conserve valuable bird and other wildlife habitat. Because a large part of Audubon's mission is preserving, protecting, and improving habitat, we strongly urge the council to support this ordinance and approve it. And please do add Audubon chapter of Minneapolis to the list of supporting organizations for this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Deanna White.
My nice free reusable Hennepin County bag. I wanted to just say that I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today about this ordinance. My name is Deanna White, and I am the state director for an organization called Clean Water Action. We have more than 55,000 Minnesota members, 12,000, a little over 12,000 of which live in the city of Minneapolis. And this is an issue that is very much followed by our members and encouraged by our members. And so we're here today to support the ordinance. As my name indicates, Clean Water Action is an organization that works to protect Minnesota's waters and to provide opportunities for people to support and take action in support of these goals. So there's a widespread support for the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance among our membership in Minneapolis. This stack is just from Minneapolis. In the last couple of months, we've collected, as of today, over 2,700 signatures in support of this ordinance from a variety of wards around the city, and we'll be delivering those to the appropriate ward members later today so you can get a look at them. But I wanted to make sure you saw the size of the stack and how supportive the people of Minneapolis are of this ordinance, and how much we understand that this is part of a larger waste issue, that we have a lot more work to do than just bans on bags, but that this is an action that we can take now that will have an immediate impact and will make a difference. We're most concerned about single-use plastic pollution and its impact on our communities and on water. Most plastic bags, as you heard, are not recycled, and we may use them once. I have cats. I understand the litter situation and the bag liner situation, but they typically don't end up reused and they don't end up recycled. They end up in our waterways where they decompose, and we're seeing more plastic resin in water quality tests as well as the other components that plastic breaks down into. Preventing the generation of disposable products like single-use plastic bags reduces the amount of money needed for controlling and managing trash and litter, so it's a fiscal issue for the city as well. And it also saves businesses money not having to pay for and provide these items. So we believe that it's a smart decision all the way around. We also believe that restrictions are effective. We've seen time and time again that when you restrict the use of a product like a plastic bag, it educates people about the issue, it draws attention to the issue, and people do change their behavior. Whether it's a tax or an incentive, the fact is that it gets people's attention and it lets them make a choice about changing their behavior and better protecting the environment. So we believe that this is a cost-effective choice that's better for the environment, better for Minneapolis, and that's why Clean Water Action and the thousands of Minneapolis residents that we represent supports this ordinance and encourages you to move it forward.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nancy, and I'm not sure if the last name is Adors. Is there Nancy here? Anderson, maybe. Okay, if Nancy shows up, she can speak later. Then we have Judy Enenstein.
I speak not only for myself, but also as a representative of the East Isles Green Team and the East Isles Residents Association, IRA. First, I would like to state for the record that both the East Isles Residents Association and the East Isles Green Team have voted to endorse the proposed plastic bag ordinance of the Minneapolis City Ordinances. Second, speaking for myself, I would like to remind everyone that this is a very modest proposal. We should all be considering ways to decrease all uses of plastic bags in our daily lives. Even the seemingly less hazardous bags like low-density polyethylene, LDPE, found in single-use grocery bags actually presents hazards from the time of production through their disposal to both health and environment. Although plastics create a huge amount of garbage, I will focus on health effects. Not only are plastic bags made of toxic substances such as benzene and sometimes metal colorants, which create hazards for workers producing the bags, but discarded bags can absorb toxins from the environment. This poses a direct threat to fish, birds, turtles, even earthworms, and ultimately all of us. Fish and turtles and birds mistake plastic bags as food.
You can set pictures down on that overhead there, and I think people can see them if you want.
And that. And then that. Okay. When plastic bags block their digestive systems, they may starve, and when turtles swallow bags, gas from indigestible food makes them buoyant, and they can no longer dive for food. Birds are smothered by plastic bags. Ingested polyethylene particles can also alter hormone regulation in fish. When earthworms digest plastic particles, these particles with associated toxins pass into our soil and surface water. As plastics pass through the food chain, they not only deplete our food supply by killing fish and birds, but have direct effects on humans, including increased cancer rate and potential birth defects. Polyethylene can absorb organic contaminants much more than other plastics do. Polychlorobiphenyls, PCBs, are absorbed by plastics like LDPE and can be transferred by ingestion to organisms such as young water birds. When humans eat fish from areas of the Great Lakes that are contaminated with high concentrations of PCBs, the PCBs can contribute to delayed human nervous system development. In conclusion, to help protect both ourselves and our environment, I urge you to limit the use of plastic bags in Minneapolis stores. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker who signed up is Erin Niehoff. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak, Chair Gordon and council members. I'm Erin Niehoff, a resident of Ward 2. As a young professional in the water policy realm and a recent U of M graduate still living near the U of M campus, I believe this is very important. Currently, only plastic bags are offered by the biggest chain stores in Dinkytown. And while even I am not perfect at remembering my own bag when I go shopping, and goodness knows I have enough free reusable bags from a variety of organizations, this ordinance will help me and others like me form new habits and allow for more bag offerings by retailers. Like the MPCA rep, though, I do caution about the fees. Target offers 5 cents off for bringing one's own bag per bag. That has not been enough to change my habits fully and others like me. However, all in all, I do support this ordinance, and I hope that you all will as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Next is Jamie Flewell. Welcome and good afternoon.
Thank you. They give me a lot of letters. Good afternoon, Chair Gordon. Thank you, committee members. My name is Jamie Poole, and I'm the president of the Minnesota Grocers Association. On behalf of the retail food industry of Minnesota, we greatly appreciate the opportunity today to address you as you consider the best approach to the ordinance presented. When dealing with these types of policies, we believe it's important to ask what's the defined concern, what's the desired result, and what role can all stakeholders play in the solution strategies. We caution on creating a policy that does not present a holistic approach to its structure and that has the potential to make winners and losers in the marketplace by limiting consumer choice, which in turn presents unintended consequences for the businesses in Minneapolis. As active members of our local communities, our members are in the forefront of supporting and promoting a sustainable environment. The Minnesota food industry is a leader in voluntary recycling. We are committed to an aggressive waste reduction. For over a decade, we have voluntarily encouraged our shoppers to reduce, reuse, and recycle by offering plastic recycling at our locations. And I want to take a moment just to talk about that a little bit. I brought my little sample here. Our grocers all across Minneapolis offer voluntary take-back programs. And what we take back, if we look at this, it is the things that we're saying now are exempt from this, right? We take back our dry cleaner bags. We take back the newspaper bags. We actually take back the things that wrap the toilet paper and wrap the Kleenexes. We do all of this voluntarily. These are then taken, picked up by a variety of ways from our locations. Some use these. They bring them to an organization called Merrick, where disabled workers sort them and send them on to become bench decking products. Some of our partners go all the way through. They collect them through a large group, through all the chains all across Minnesota, and those two then go back to become the product we know as Trex. So we think it's very, very important to acknowledge that this is available currently in a voluntary program at all grocers across not only Minneapolis, but the state. So we think that we're concerned with the unintended consequences by banning plastic and looking at exceptions in there, what that will actually do to the services that are provided. Curbside is another thing that we think is an opportunity that we should look at. I think looking at solutions like this is going to take partnerships from all across. We, over the years, have also partnered on behalf of industry with the Pollution Control Agency, looking for voluntary programs. We had a reduce and reuse where we provided reusable bags to constituents all across the state. If they committed to reusing 3 times, they got a gift card. We had a little drawing. We did an event at the state fair where we asked consumers to make a commitment to reusing and recycling. I think these things are very important, and all of these are ways that we can look at creating differences. One of the other things that a lot of our members do is already offer that incentive back if you do bring a reusable bag. It's a voluntary program. Again, one particular grocer, they donate that money back to Second Harvest. And over the course of their program, it's almost $400,000 that's been donated back to Second Harvest. It would be a shame to see some of these very, very positive community efforts be disbanded because of this ordinance or the guidance within this. So I ask that you consider those as you're moving forward with this. Again, we believe that consumers have a choice and that we would like to see the opportunity to educate customers and work again in partnership with the city of Minneapolis to make sure that they make the best choices for their households. I like to say when you come to a grocery store, there's a shelf full of peanut butter, and you might like organic, you might like sunflower butter, you may like chunky, you might like creamy, you may have what you believe your personal preference is. At the end of the day, you still have that opportunity when you're doing your shopping to make a choice. And we think when you come to do your best, you're checking out, you should also have that choice. One of the things I also, I guess I'm out of time, aren't I? I apologize.
You could just wrap up.
Yep,
briefly.
I will. One of the other things I just want to quickly think about when we're doing something along this lines where you are incurring bag fees, that fee responsibility falls at that checkout. And the person behind the checkout is the one that has to educate the customer on the fee, on what the fee is, how to pay the fee, and why it's being charged. And I don't know that that's also appropriate. I would love to walk you through what a transaction potentially would look like, but I ask you to consider that also as you move through the ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
And we
time.
do have a plethora of grocers here with us today that if we had a second, they'd love to answer questions as well. So thank you.
All right. Well, and I appreciate all the time you've taken as we were developing the ordinance too. And I'm sure we'll turn to you when and if we are working on implementation. The next speaker is Russ Henry.
Chair Gordon, council members, thank you very much for considering this ordinance today. My name is Russ Henry, and I am the co-chair of the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council. I'm also the owner of an organic landscaping company. And there's a couple things I'd like us to consider with this proposal. First of all, the parks, at being one of the largest landowners in the city of Minneapolis, 15% of the land, do bear a big responsibility when it comes to the plastic bag pickup. I myself was picking up garbage out of Lake Hiawatha last summer. At the end of the summer, I did it for about 2 hours, and I picked up a giant garbage bag filled to the brim with garbage, and in that there was about a dozen plastic bags. I found plastic bags in the water. I was kind of down in the water doing the pickup, about 3 or 4 feet deep, and they would float down in different strata or layers of the water. So I'm sure there's a considerable amount of plastic within all of our waterways already in Minneapolis, and anything we do to get rid of that plastic that's going to be around forever, I think is super important. I would ask that we consider the loophole, it seems like, that's developing around paper bags. I would not like us to be encouraging paper bag use to go up. I think the bring your own bag ordinance, and the name of it says it all. We should be bringing our own reusable bags to the grocery store. Let's see, and then finally, I am very glad that you've included an exemption for WIC and EBT as a co-chair of the Food Council. We're constantly working on food access, and anything we can do to ensure smooth and even food access for low-income folks is absolutely an imperative. Thank you all very much. I hope you pass this ordinance.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jason McGrath.
Council members, I biked to City Hall today from the wonderful neighborhood of Corcoran in South Minneapolis, Ward 9. And I thought, around when I was crossing Lake Street, I thought I should count how many of these bags I see. I guess I was thinking, oh, maybe it'll make an impression if I could say I saw a dozen of them just on the way here. 52. I saw 52 bags just in the couple miles between Lake Street and downtown on the Hiawatha bike path. Not just any, big garbage bags or little fast food bags, but bags made out of the material that Bag Monster is made out of over there. So I encourage you, take a walk, take a bike ride, and be mindful yourself, and you'll be shocked. I think I was shocked, and I came here to talk about this. So I just have a brief statement. As both an ordinary citizen of Minneapolis and a member of the local Sierra Club North Star chapter, I'm so proud to live in a city with a zero waste plan. As it becomes ever more clear that Freudian slip, the drastic environmental impacts of industrial modernity are changing the planet in a way that will be evident even from the geological record thousands of years from now, it becomes essential that some forward-looking local governments across the globe begin to think about genuine long-term sustainability instead of short-term profit and convenience. I believe this ordinance will turn out to be quite easy to live with. I'm sure I'm not alone in having at least a dozen canvas tote bags hanging in my closet, in my kitchen, in my office. And if this ordinance passes, I will not be buying a bag. I think that's relevant to the point that Councilmember Johnson brought up earlier. It's not like we'll all go out and buy bags because we already have them all over our house. If you need one, I'll give you a couple. They can be used over and over again for years, while a plastic bag generally only gets used once, but leaves a mark that will last beyond our lifetimes in the form of both plastic waste pellets and greenhouse gases and all the environmental impacts that we've seen already from other speakers. Our reward for the small adjustment in our shopping habits will be leaving a healthier planet for future generations of people and for all living things. 20 years ago, I lived for a while in Taipei, Taiwan. At the time, it would drive me nuts that you couldn't even get like a pack of gum without them shoving a plastic bag at you with it in this very polluted Asian metropolis. When I visited Taipei more recently, I've been delighted to find that they've implemented exactly the sort of policy that we're considering here as part of an overall greening of the city that's left it far less polluted, far more pleasant to live in and to visit. I mentioned Taipei rather than the cities we usually get compared to, like Austin, Seattle, and Portland, to emphasize that we should aim at global leadership in our environmental policies in Minneapolis, and we should realize that we're part of a planet-wide effort to reach environmental sanity and a sustainable future, and this ordinance is a small but crucial part of that effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Sarah Silver. After Sarah is Lynn Hoffman. No, there she is. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Sarah Silver, and I go to school in South Minneapolis. And every morning when I go to school, I drive along Hiawatha, and I see, like other people have said, there are just trash bags everywhere. And it's really a bummer because, when you think of a beautiful city and when you're you want to be proud of your city, you don't want it to be littered with trash everywhere. And all of these bags were collected along the Mississippi in just a few hours on Sunday. And an issue that hasn't been brought up much during this meeting is the environmental justice impact. Many of the bags that are thrown away are burned in the Herc burner downtown, and that's causing major pollution in North Minneapolis and downtown, and that's mostly impacting minorities and underprivileged communities. And there's a much higher rate of asthma and cancer and sicknesses inner city, and a lot of it is due to pollution. And as a young person, I think this is very important for me and my generation because the rate of pollution has been steadily increasing. And I think that it's my responsibility to take control of my future and represent my generation as a generation that cares about the environment and cares about my community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that. Lynn Hoffman. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, council members. Thanks for having me. So my name is Lynn, and I'm here representing Eureka Recycling in support of the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance, including the fees for all single-use bags. As a nonprofit social enterprise with a zero waste mission, we strongly support efforts toward the elimination of disposable bags, both paper and plastic, in favor of reusable bags made of renewable, safe materials. There's been a lot of great discussion today, so I just wanted to bring a few additional points for your consideration. One is that plastic bags are often reported as a very small percentage of the waste stream, which is because our discards are often measured in weight. And it's important to have metrics. It's important to measure when we can, but the tools available to us can sometimes have limitations, including life cycle analysis that are used to measure the impacts of single-use products. For example, most life cycle analysis typically take into consideration things like greenhouse gases and resources, which are easier to measure than social impacts or toxins in the way that they enter our food chain. Those kinds of impacts can be harder to put into an equation and harder to write down on paper. Finally, as part of our zero waste work, we operate a material recovery facility in Northeast Minneapolis, a MRF, sometimes called, where we currently process, which means sort and send to end markets to be recycled into new products, over 200 tons of recyclables a day from around the metro area. Recently, the Minneapolis City Council approved the Department of Public Works to negotiate a contract with Eureka to process all the recyclables from single-family homes in Minneapolis to begin in November. While plastic bags are recyclable through drop-off programs like grocery stores, which people have talked about, only 5% are actually recycled through this system. But in facilities like ours, they cause huge problems, like Robin showed in the slide. It's confusing for consumers. If these things are recyclable, why can't I put them in my recycling cart, right? So in short, most MRFs use equipment that run on axles to separate the material. And those bags get wound up and bound around those axles and cause major problems. So our facility has to shut down about an hour to 2 hours a day, and people have to climb in and cut out and pull out those plastic bags. So it really decreases the efficiency of recycling. And then those small bits of plastic also end up in other material streams, so they can contaminate the materials that are going to other markets, like the paper, things like that. So in short, we support this ordinance. We think it's very important towards meeting the city's zero waste goals and our zero waste mission, and we applaud your leadership on the issue. And we're available for any questions if we can be of any help.
Thank you very much. We also have a Kate Davenport. Okay. Next is Jonathan Perman. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gordon and members of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. I'm Jonathan Perman, and I represent the Trade Association for both the manufacturers and recyclers of plastic bags, and I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today. Plastic bags are nearly all made, the kind that we're talking about are made in the United States. In fact, 30,000 people are employed in this industry, providing good jobs and good wages. Tote bags, by contrast, are made of a thicker oil-based polypropylene and are made all overseas. So one thing that Minneapolis might want to consider is why would a community encourage the substitution of a product that's made in the U.S. that is made from a byproduct, only a byproduct of natural gas, and substitute it for a product that's made overseas that is oil-based. Across the nation, plastic bags make up a very tiny portion of the waste stream. And before you there are some numbers that show the amount of waste that plastic bags take up compared to the total waste stream. So, and these are studies that were done by the Minnesota, or commissioned by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and also by Hennepin County. And what you see there is that plastics make up roughly 15% of the waste stream. The category of bag and plastic combined make up about 5%. And then within that category, plastic bags makes up 15% of that. So what you come down to is, when you take into the exemptions in the ordinance, you're talking about affecting about 0.6% of the waste stream of Minneapolis. In fact, in 2010, the US EPA showed that the nation is discarding now more of these kinds of bags than all of the high-density polyethylene plastic bags placed in the landfills. While a small fraction of cities in the U.S. have regulated bags, we know of no city that's ever proven that their ordinance actually reduced bag consumption, reduced litter, and achieved any meaningful environmental goal. Washington, D.C. has been held up by some in Minneapolis as sort of the paragon of plastic bag policy, where they levied a 5-cent fee that would be used to clean up the Anacostia River. Well, last year, the Washington Post conducted an investigation of that, and they found, and I quote, despite the growing praise for the program, the reality is as murky as the Anacostia. Measurements for success are admittedly non-scientific and vary widely, and more of the fund money has been allocated for field trips for school children and employee salaries than to any tangible cleanup projects on the river or the watershed. They purported to show, a couple months after introducing it, in 2010, an 85% decrease in plastic bags, but the Washington Post found that there was little evidence of such a sudden and drastic reduction, and even the main sponsor of the bill admitted to the Washington Post, quote, well, I know we did a back-of-the-envelope calculation, which is about as unscientific as possible. But most revealing is that one might ask, that if you're going to pass a fee, as they did in Washington, you would expect that fee revenue from bags to start declining, right? Not so. In Washington, it actually went up 40% over a 4-year period. Washington did grow by 10% in population. It didn't grow 40%. So I'm sure that Minneapolis does not want to emulate the Washington, D.C. model. But other models as well, in Austin, where they've introduced a ban, reusable bags now make up the same proportion of the waste stream as did all the plastic bags combined. Other cities have passed plastic bag regulations and now have repealed them, including in Dallas, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Huntington Beach. But what I want to say today is that we're not, I'm going to wrap it up. What I'd like to say here is that we're, as an association, not here just to say no. We would like to work with Hennepin County, who we have met with and had discussions about building a partnership between the public and private sectors to try to address this issue and to try to improve the recycling rates, not just of plastic bags, but of the bigger piece, which is all plastic film and all plastic packaging. An effort would involve enhancing education, take-back programs, working with neighborhood merchant associations, and we think that by dealing with plastic waste in a comprehensive fashion, rather than aiming your sights at just one product that takes up 0.6% of the waste stream, you would be much more better off as a city, and this would be more cost-effective for small businesses and for their customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm just wondering if our cameraman can also, or camera operator, can get a picture of the green chart here, the minuscule amount of bags to be banned that were collected in 2011 in Hennepin County appears to be 344 tons.
Right.
That's minuscule.
Is a percentage of the waste stream is what we're talking about. That's the point of the chart.
It's a small percentage that weighs 344 tons.
It's exactly, yeah. of 53,000. Right. Thank you.
Well, maybe we can check the math.
Yeah, I'll just point out the math doesn't seem right on that either. I tried to do the percentage calculation and just a calculator, and it seems way off in terms of. Actually, it looks worse because I think it's a lot less than 344 tons. But
all right, thank you very much. Next speaker is Carrie Vrabel.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thanks for letting me be here, Council. I'm a small business owner, and I live in the Bancroft neighborhood, which is right in between a bus stop and a convenience store. And I've owned my house for 14 years, and I'm not lying when I say I've never purchased a grocery bag. When I found, or garbage bag rather, when I found that I've actually needed one, I've gone out and had to clean up my boulevard, which I've planted Minnesota native flowers, and it's all stuck there. And I contacted the convenience store, and I explained to him that everything that he's selling and all the bags that he's handing out are creating trash all along the street where we're living. And I got him to add more garbage bins, but there's no recycling bins, and there's more trash. Also, with my business, I don't hand out any bags, and actually my regular customers, they know through speaking to them and educating them that if they bring in their own containers, they get a hug, and they actually feel empowered by this. So what I would like to see with what you guys are creating is if you're actually creating loopholes for plastic bags to still be able to be used in some instances, because I sell donuts. I don't give out bags, they're food. Don't bust me on that, but that they would be compostable. All the ones that the newspapers come in, all the ones for the stores that people are buying cookies, they need to be compostable. Otherwise, this isn't solving any of the problems. And when people say that we need a choice, well, I think the choice would rather be to drink clean water And if you do consume animals, that they're not full of plastic. And if the birds are dying because they're eating plastic, that's going to be more ticks, that's going to be more mosquitoes and everything else that are carrying other diseases. So it's not about just giving people this choice for selfish and laziness reasons. It's instead of enabling the citizens, I think they would rather be empowered to know and to be educated as to how they're part of the ecosystem and how they can make a difference. So I would rather see, if you're going to put, any sort of cost on getting a paper bag, have it be 50 cents. So they actually have to make a choice. And the reason that those reusable bags are ending up in the recycling bins is because we don't have a ban on bags. So they say, yay, I have this, but when I go to the store, I know that I'm going to be enabled to take one of their bags. So, and also I go to the farmers markets all the time, and the farmers don't want to be handing out the plastic bags. So I actually go there with my extra bags that I have not purchased, but I have received from people not using them, and I hand them out to people at the farmers markets. So they don't want to be spending the money on it either. So I know that you guys have them in as a loophole, but if you just cut it out completely, the citizens won't be enabled. They'll actually be empowered to bring their own darn bag. Because our grandparents and our great-grandparents, everything was in bulk. Your milk was delivered in a glass jar and you put it back and it was refilled again. This is just ridiculous that we don't want to empower the citizens to stop being lazy and destroying the only place that we have. And Minneapolis is seen as a very forward-thinking city, so it shouldn't take this much debate just to make this happen. And I consider this a gateway, like a gateway drug, a gateway to fix our environment. Straws, any single-use plastic, needs to be outlawed also. I've done the cleanup at Pike Island after a storm. I just went for a walk and was so appalled at what I saw that I had to start picking it up. And people that were docked at the beach started giving us garbage bags off of their boats, and other people started joining us. And it was plastic bags and plastic everything that was washing up from the Mississippi, which is ending up in the oceans. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is Adrian Typhon. Typhon. Might be mispronouncing that. Okay, welcome.
Hello. My name's Adrian Tipton, and I thank you guys for the opportunity to be here today. I'm actually not from the area, but I did spend my postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Minnesota in the Department of Chemistry. My PhD is in synthetic organic chemistry, so I have a bit of background in this area. I currently work for Noblex, who is a leading manufacturer in plastic bags in North America. We also have 2 recycling facilities, one of which is the largest in the world. My role there as Vice President of Innovation and Market Development actually is to develop new products, develop more sustainable products, because that's one of our initiatives, as well as to find things that are better for the environment, such as different types of paper and plastic materials. 3 things to take away today, and I think you've heard a lot of them. Plastic shopping bags actually are not made from crude oil. They're made from byproducts of natural gas, and the EPA actually states that less than 0.5% of plastic shopping bags make up the waste in the United States. And plastic bags are recyclable and they are reusable. So I know we've heard a lot about this, but if we reuse them and recycle them, the actual waste stream will continue to decrease. I think a lot of that has to go with education. Noblex does have an education program for this, but I think we could do better and more in this area. In particular, convenience stores actually are said to be responsible for over 80% of the plastic bags you see floating around. So a lot of these bag programs, these recycle programs, are in major grocery stores and retail stores. I think we could do a better job in convenience stores to address that. But 90% of the U.S. population has access to these drop-off points. There are several locations around 10-mile radius of this building, in fact. And you'll see here, this is the type of material we collect here up on the upper, in the lower right. And Americans recycle 1.17 billion pounds of plastic bags and film a year. Now, film is everywhere. It's not just bags. You receive mattresses in it, furniture in it, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of other plastics that go into the U.S. waste stream, but 1.17 billion pounds are recycled in bags alone at various drop-off facilities. But again, I think we could do a better job of that. Just to show you a little bit about our employees, some 3 hours away from here in Cano, Wisconsin, we have one of the leading recycle facilities, but we actually recycle post-consumer HDPE and LDPE plastic films. We collect those in store, and we also purchase some on the market. And we put those through a separator. We wash the film, we shred it, and then we make it into pellets. But again, we have one of the world's largest closed loop recycling systems in the world. And we're very proud of that and the technology that goes into it. Our Cano facility has 150 employees, and we hold over 10 patents in that facility for the way they recycle the material. We then generate pellets out of this, which actually can either go into plastic bags, which is what we tend to manufacture, can liners, films, different types of plastic bags, but then we also have seen it in outdoor decking, playground equipment, and other types of materials as well.
Could you wrap it up, please?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
So with that, we just want to say reuse, recycle, reduce. So I think a lot of people know that we can recycle bags. We want people to have a choice in the marketplace of what they can choose to carry out their materials in. And we just need to think about the implications of a bag ban and a tax in terms of how it'll affect the retailers, how it'll affect the consumers, and how it'll affect jobs in the U.S. And so we just ask that you give that the consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Next, I have Kiko Visi. You can correct that pronunciation for me.
Hi, thanks Chairman Gordon and the committee for having us here today and this opportunity to speak. My name is Keiko Visi. I am a resident of Ward 13, and I am honored to be the chair of Linden Hills Power and Light. Excuse me. As a city that has demonstrated its commitment to progressive environmental policy, including a vision of zero waste Minneapolis, this plastic bag ban is consistent with the values of our city and our citizens to take it to the next step. Banning plastic bags reduces our city's overall carbon footprint and combats climate change in a very simple way. Banning unnecessary plastic bags reduces our reliance on and use of fossil fuels and the environmental damage that is associated with drilling, processing, transport, and the use of these fuels. Banning plastic bags beautifies our surrounding and our local resources. Over the years, I have participated in various cleanup events around our gorgeous city. Each and every time, there is an astonishing amount of plastic bags that are collected as part of these cleanup efforts. Remains of plastic bags are embedded in the shoreline, stuck in the branches of trees, and blowing across the paths. Yet, what's collected is just shreds of bags. The other parts of the bags are in the lakes, in the creeks, clogging up our storm sewers, and even worse. Banning plastic bags saves us money and increases the efficiency of our recycling processes. As the folks from Eureka have pointed out, that even though these bags are prohibited from our single sort recycling, they inevitably find their way into the recycling stream, and they clog up the sorting and recycling machinery. This creates significant costs for our recycling processors, which in turn is passed along to the city and our taxpayers. Banning plastic bags prevents air pollution, especially among our most vulnerable population. Single-use plastic bags that don't end up clogging up our recycling machinery or as litter around our city will end up being burned in the burner. Even with the best technology, burning plastic releases some nasty chemicals, including dioxins, into the air completely unnecessarily. While I understand there's hesitancy from retailers regarding this proposal, this is a very small cost of doing business within Minneapolis, and I'm confident that our smart local business owners can figure it out. Large retailers like Aldi and IKEA have successfully implemented programs where customers pay for their bags or bring their own. Most local grocery stores already offer an option of giving a credit or a discount when customers bring their own bags. Collecting a fee for paper bags does not seem to be such an administrative hurdle as to outweigh the benefits of implementing this proposal. There are many common sense and reasonable exceptions provided here. We have the benefit of learning from the over 150 cities and countries internationally that have adopted plastic bag bans already. And this proposal reflects the lessons learned from those early adopters. The proposal in front of this committee and this council is extremely reasonable and balanced. Reducing the amount of plastic is key towards moving us towards the common goal of a zero-waste city. There are many instances where reducing or eliminating plastic is very difficult. but eliminating single-use plastic bags is one of the easiest. Paper bags do have an environmental benefit, an environmental impact. However, the long-term impact of paper bags is not nearly as severe as plastic. Therefore, it's reasonable to me, and in this proposal, to ban plastic bags and discourage paper bag use initially through a very small fee. And that way, then we can move us away from just recycling and up the hierarchy towards reusing and reducing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Jessica Reppart. Oh, sorry, maybe it's Reinhardt. Jessica? Not seeing her here. Is Martin Medansky here? Okay. Is Thalia Garcia here?
Okay, it's Talia Garcia.
Thalia, sorry.
Okay, Chair Gordon and committee members, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about bring your own bag ordinance. Buju Talia Indigenous Raganashi Mung Makondudem. My name is Talia Garcia. I'm from the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe and Bear Clan, and I'm here with my group. Hold on. Yeah, I'm here with my group, Little Earth Youth Center, and we are absolutely in favor of your bring your own bag. I believe this is a big issue because the average family takes home almost 1,500 plastic bags per year. They take up to 1,000 years to break down. At least 267 different species have suffered from getting caught in or eating them. A lot of people that are against the ban is making money off of it. I believe we should get rid of it because it isn't good for our planet. Minnesota itself is 87,000 tons that are thrown away each year. Thank you for this opportunity to address this council, and thank you for all you do for the city.
Well, thank you so much for coming down today and sharing that with us. Next speaker is Ricardo McCurley. And thanks to your support team for coming with you too. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, City Council members. I wear three hats today. I am the Executive Director of the Whittier Alliance. I am also a new member on SEAC, and I'm a Ward 12 resident. From the Whittier Alliance, after presenting this potential ordinance to both our business representatives and our environmental task force, the environmental task force was in broad support of it. The business association actually was rather apathetic to it, and their only concern was a question of implementation and the fees, which it sounds like that you as a group are going to address with the organizations that are implementing it in the city structure. So that's really good to hear, and I think with that, our businesses are going to feel pretty good about this ordinance. As a member of SEAC, I wasn't around when this was created. However, I was so excited when I joined and heard about it because as a Ward 12 resident, my family and I have been battling this for a long time, and it's really a question of habit, and it's a generational question. And what's funny is that my children are now better at bringing bags than I am, and they are the impetus that get us to make sure that our bags are in the car when we go to the grocery store or anywhere else. They also see firsthand what plastic bags do because we have a small rain garden in front of our house, and it is convenience store bags that fill it every spring, every summer. We see it after the snow melts. So as a resident, I am also in favor of this. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Next speaker on the list is Kendra Rhodes. Veda.
So hi, I'm take off my hat. I'm Kendra Riddle. I live in Ward 12 and I go to South High. And I'll just get straight to why this is really important to me as a young person. because it's like, we were talking about those upstream costs, you know, the greenhouse gases. Like, this is really jeopardizing my future. And those fourth graders that were in here, who, if this ordinance passes, they like won't even remember what plastic bags were at the grocery store by the time they're buying their own groceries, right? So that's like something that's like really important to me, you know, and what we were talking about, like young people are getting it. Like, we're chill with like bringing our own bag, you know, like some of our favorite stores, Buffalo Exchange, it's a hip consignment store in Uptown. I don't really think they have a lot of suits, but thanks. Yeah, they like do a thing where they give you a token when you're done buying your stuff to put in an organization box that would like, so they give the money that they would have spent on your plastic bag. And you get to choose the organization you want to donate to. Last month they could choose between like Youth Farm, like like teen counseling thing, and like some animal organization. So that's like one way. Secondly, I want to touch on how this is really an environmental justice issue, and why we need to do this here in Minneapolis. For one reason, that we can be a leader on this matter, as like we have been a leader in the past, and two is because we have this herc burner downtown, which is where most of our trash bags are ending up, and also not coincidentally where there's a high majority of people of color that live there and low-income residents. The trash being burned there is contributing to poor air quality, and that's affecting those residents. And we know that asthma is the #1 leading cause for students to miss school. And so this is hurting young people, not just in the future, but now as well. And so we need to really be a leader on that as well. And so I also want to shout out and thank council members Cano and Gordon and Johnson, who have voted for or against the water yard in East Phillips, because that's another environmental justice issue. Extra shout out to Council Member Cano, who has led that initiative to deindustrialize the area and is continuing to do that despite the vote for it. Yeah, so that's all I have to say.
All right, well, thank you very much, and good for you to sneak in some comments on other topics that we're not talking about today. Just luckily, there's not too many speakers after you, or they might start trying to figure out what to work in there as well. Actually, I only have one more person signed up, but there still is an opportunity after the last person speaks. If you want to speak, I'll ask other people to get up. But the last person on my list is Diane Hofstede. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Gordon and members of the committee. I'm Diane Hofstede from Ward 3, Clean Action Water member. I just want to mention a few countries that have adopted changes to plastic bags and the use of them: Ethiopia, Somalia, China, and the state of Hawaii, in addition to cities such as San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Portland. It's really easy to purchase a small washable bag. This one I've had for over a decade and works really well. You can throw it in your trunk, put it on your body, your bike, or just bring it along with you as you shop. I also think that there can actually be some fun when we think about how we can lead by example. I'm looking forward to creative folks posting ways for us to remember to use our bags, YouTube videos, and other opportunities that we can entertain ourselves with the new changes. And I suggest, as the article in MinPost stated by Bill Ludke, he said, "I don't think that the plastic bag in my neighbor's tree is ever coming down. No firefighter will climb 100 feet to remove a plastic bag, and there will be no malevolent litter-fighting squirrel. It's a season's worth of budding leaves, and wind and rain haven't dislodged it. I don't know what will." You can. I applaud your willingness to bring this item before us as a public hearing and your willingness to lead. And I also look forward to the passage by the City Council, the mayor, in cooperation with the businesses and our consumers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who didn't sign up that would like to speak before I close the public hearing? Seeing no one then, I will close the public hearing. And we can discuss the matter. I think I will move the ordinance so that we have it properly before us and see if there's any discussion, any suggested amendments that anyone would like to make. And while you're thinking about that, I just want to thank everybody who's still here. Also thank everybody who came to speak on this. That was a lot of listening and a lot to get through, and I'm sure gave us some things to think about. Are there any questions or comments on the ordinance? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is our plastic bag monster okay? I just want to make sure. I imagine it's pretty hot under there. The bags are probably very insulated, but I appreciate you hanging in during this. Personally, I hate seeing these plastic bags floating around, getting caught in trees. I go and actually clean these out at Minnehaha Creek every year. And in 2010, I reached out to our state legislator, my state legislator at the time, Senator Linda Berglund, and I said, hey, these plastic bags everywhere, is there some way to tackle this? And she actually drafted an ordinance, or not an ordinance, a state statute, a bill, to add a 5-cent fee on both paper and plastic bags. So slight little bit of trivia. I ended up lobbying behind that. If Ann is still here from the Audubon Society, I appreciate the support of the Audubon Society on that measure. It was during the time of the Pawlenty administration, so of course it didn't actually go anywhere. But it ultimately inspired other cities to look at the measure. Other states also looked at the information that we had collected. With this particular ordinance, I do have some concerns about particularly the loophole that is in here that essentially would require or would allow and incentivize paper bag consumption, increased paper bag consumption. And actually the MPCA mentioned that in Portland they saw a 500% increase in paper bag usage, which is 4 times more environmentally costly, 4 times the environmental impact of plastic bags, well, the HDPE plastic bags specifically. And that credit, this credit that creates that loophole, was actually not part of the Citizens Environmental Advisory Committee recommendations. So it has since been added in there, which then creates these unintended consequences. In terms of this ordinance, acknowledging the increase in paper bag use, it is worse in terms of upstream impact. And I'm sensitive to that. Kendra, who is here, I'm not sure if she's still here, but Kendra from my ward, who spoke before us, mentioned that her biggest concern here is the impact of greenhouse gases. Well, if we're increasing paper bag consumption 500%, we have a larger greenhouse gas impact, larger environmental footprint. And I just want to say that, I also think it's important that we follow the MPCA's advice on including language for evaluating and reporting on this ordinance. And so I have concerns that we have opportunities to improve it. I've actually worked on some potential amendment language. I've talked with some council members about it. Frankly, I think I would like to see another cycle for this. We did it for spitting and lurking, and that was ultimately past the ban. We did it for the animal care and control ordinances. So I would like it if we could have another cycle in order to work on some of these shortcomings of the ordinance to make sure that it is strong as possible. And specifically, I think there's a way for us to tackle litter overall. We're not Texas, but if we were Texas, plastic bags are only 2% of the litter according to their audit. I'd like to take care of 100% of the litter. When I'm walking down my streets, I'm seeing crushed aluminum cans, I'm seeing plastic bottles, I'm seeing candy wrappers, I'm seeing potato chip bags. I see all this stuff. When I go and clean the creek, we see all that, and even found a patio space heater in the creek. I couldn't believe that one. But, we have a huge opportunity here, and so I think we need to do this right. And I'm actually going to contest what Mr. Garwood said. He said that the point of this, the goal of the ordinance, was to change consumer behavior. That's not the point of the ordinance. The point of the ordinance is to reduce litter and have a better environmental impact. Changing human behavior is one way you get to that specific outcome of a better impact on the environment. That's not the ultimate goal. That's not the goal, is to change human behavior. The goal is to leave our environment better than we found it. So how are we going to do that? I think we have opportunities in this ordinance left. If we don't stay this over another council cycle, I'll work before our next full council cycle to try to get these changes together, but I'd like changes to be fully vetted so that we have an opportunity to make sure it's as rock solid as possible. There's no need to ultimately rush something through that's going to be environmentally weaker when we can come up with something that's going to be stronger. And I also want to mention too, if the goal of the ordinance was, let's say hypothetically, to change consumer behavior, then it fails in that regard if it's increasing paper bag consumption. Because the goal is, according to the ordinance title, bring your own bag. Well, if we're just ultimately increasing consumption of another type of more environmentally costly type of bag, that's a problem. I have a problem with that. These unintended consequences, they do matter. Take it from me as a former systems engineer, you have to be able to understand where you're going to have impacts all around on something like this. And I'm concerned about the shortcomings and the loopholes and the consequences that are going to happen if we don't make sure we cover all of our bases here and really put the environment, reducing greenhouse gases, and reducing litter first in this. And so with that, I'd move that we carry this over into our next committee meeting so that we have time to work on fixing the shortcomings of this ordinance. But I really appreciate the intent. Like I said, I hate seeing these things floating around. So at the end of the day, you know, this is about improving the environment, making it better for both our citizens now and all generations to come.
So there's been a motion to delay. Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Chair Goodman, Chair Gordon, and committee members for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. And also thank you to all the people who participated, the Bag Monster and everybody else who took their time to come here and give us information. I'm one of the authors of this ordinance, and I would like to thank my co-author, Cam Gordon, and his office for the hard work they've done on this issue. And I wanted to just talk about one thing, which is, you know, since the last week, I've been studying more on this. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an environmental scientist. And I have actually come to terms, and actually I am supportive of the fee. Because one of the issues that even Councilmember Johnson mentioned was the fact that we're moving from plastic to paper, and we're making choice. And this is not what this ordinance is about. This ordinance is about bringing your own bag in order to reduce litter, in order to reduce waste, and to change behavior. And human behavior has the largest impact on the environment. The reason why we have global warming is because everybody wants to drive a car, and we use fossil fuel too much. This is human behavior. And changing this behavior, I think, would go a long way to addressing some of the issues that we have. And also, one of the most important things about this ordinance is, one, it took a long time to put this together. It took a long time, and Councilmember Cam Gordon has been working on this for a long time. You know, we've been going back and forth about this particular issue. And I think this is, you know, a step in the right direction. It's not a panacea. It's not going to solve all the problems that we're facing, but it's a step in the right direction, because we wouldn't be having this discussion right now if this ordinance wasn't in front of this committee. So I think this is the right step. I think we shouldn't delay this, because we have a long time before implementation. We have like a whole year before this is implemented. So of course we're going to get more information. Of course we're going to look at the implementation of it, who's going to implement it, what the cost will be. And all of these things will be discussed throughout this period of time. But I think delaying it sends a wrong message. What it does is it just puts it back. And if you want to kill something in the council, you delay the cycle. And this is what we've learned. So I think we should take our time, be deliberate. But I have evolved on the cost, and I support the 5 cents, and I support the fact that we should take responsibility for the environment. You know, I think people are saying we shouldn't legislate, we shouldn't bring these ordinances, people should do what they want. But we as individuals should take responsibility for our own actions. And so that's what I wanted to mention. And, you know, I think, and I thank my colleagues, and I want them to support this. on this committee, because I'm not a member of this committee, so all I can do is just make a suggestion. So just like the bag monster, please support this. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I wasn't sure if you were suggesting we amended to take the credit out or not.
I'm fine with keeping the credit. I'm fine, but I think the 5 cents charging for the paper bag is an important step. And the expert told us this as well. So.
Thank you. And Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to hear that Councilmember Orsami is in favor of that fee, because then I think we could strike the bag credit here, which ultimately creates the loophole. I just want to clarify too, earlier what I said was that when I said paper consumption would increase, the way that this is written now is that retailers can freely give out paper bags and avoid implementing a 5 cent fee by having a credit for reusable bags. A lot of places do that already. Good example is Lunds. I know they do that. So it's not going to change behavior. People are just going to, those who are already going there, their behavior would have been changed if that credit, if they saw that credit already. And if they go there after this changes, there's essentially no impact to them other than that they don't have plastic bags as an option. I'm sure they'll probably end up getting biodegradable plastic bags, which is great. But, you know, for those that prefer paper, they're not going to reduce their consumption at all. And in fact, I think a lot of people may just end up switching over to paper if there's any sort of delay too, in terms of how quickly plastic is rolled out, or biodegradable plastic. So, and another piece to this idea that we would pass something now and then turn around a few weeks later and modify it again. I've never seen that happen, period. And I've never seen us pass essentially a half measure, an incomplete piece that's missing something. That just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, we have these committee structures for a reason, to take the time to work out the language, to make sure it's well-rounded. And the very fact that we're even going to potentially move this forward today, missing even a piece about reporting and evaluation of how successful this is, when it's a basic recommendation from the MPCA, I would be surprised. And I don't think that that's the appropriate thing to do. So I hope that we do take the time to get in, you know, get this right.
So I just wanted to speak briefly to the idea of studying and let my colleagues know that I'm also moving a staff direction today, or tend to move staff direction. It's not a surprise. It was in the staff report, and everybody saw about it, that we're going to study, we're going to ask our staff to report back at the beginning of next year with recommendations for implementation and enforcement. And after hearing the testimony today, I think we'll add plans for how we can implement a study. So that study part I intend to incorporate today, that will direct staff to work on that as well, just to address that. But really what we're trying to figure out now is if we want to continue this one cycle or not. And Councilmember Bender, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and then I have a couple of questions, I think. So my understanding of the proposal, I just want to clarify and make sure that I can understand the reasoning of the authors. Instead of doing an all-out ban, which is one option, we could just say no more plastic bags ever in Minneapolis. You've crafted a proposal that has a way for people to buy bags, basically, if they would like. So if they want to buy a paper bag, they can, you can't just give out bags. You have to charge people 5 cents per paper bag.
Or more. But.
And if you would like to give people credit back for the bags that they bring, then an operator can give someone a 10-cent discount on their purchase. And then we have several exemptions for different kinds of plastic bags that operators can still provide. And Councilmember Johnson is saying he does not agree with my assessment, so I'm happy to be corrected.
So the 10 cent, it's not just a 10-cent credit on your purchase, it's a 10 cents off for every reusable bag, every bag of your own that you bring in to use again. So however many bags, it could be 20 or 30 or 40 cents. So, we also, we won't, I'm not sure the way you were talking about it, the non-compostable plastic bags you cannot sell for a nickel, but you can either sell a paper bag or a fully certified compostable plastic bag.
But there's a
And
pretty
then
significant
the big loophole
list
that we're
of
talking about.
exemptions,
And
just
then
to be
there's a
clear.
list of
So
exemptions.
including all takeout food establishments can still use plastic bags, which to me, it seems like a pretty significant exemption. And I would trust the authors that you've come to this thoughtfully, but I just wanted to acknowledge that there's actually many types of plastic bags that are still available given the ordinance. So thank you for clarifying. I don't want to misstate, but we have several exemptions for plastic bags that are still available. We have a 5-cent charge minimum for each paper bag that would be given, and then you can get a credit back. So we're creating incentive for people to bring their own bags. We're charging people for paper bags, and we are mostly banning plastic bags with what I would consider a significant number of exceptions to that, which still allow plastic bags to be used in the ways that the authors felt were appropriate.
Correct. We're also prohibiting the free distribution of other reusable types of bags, so you have to charge for those. So let's say a store has canvas bags, they can't just give them away, or they have these super thick plastic bags that are reusable, they can't give those away either. But, and do you have any feeling on the continuing this?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be willing to support a vote on this today. I think that there have been a lot of thoughtful engagement opportunities. I know that the authors checked with me several times. You know, the objections that are being raised remind me actually of the styrofoam conversation that we had, and some of the debates were hard to track there as well as here, where we have competing evidence. But you know, after the presentation from the folks from the PCA and the presentation from the authors, I feel comfortable supporting this today. So that's where I'm at with this proposal.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to provide clarification on this because that's not the way I'm reading the way the ordinance is written. It says that no retail establishment shall provide a paper or carryout bag that's not recyclable, and they will shall collect a pass-through charge of not less than 5 cents for each paper bag or compostable carryout bag or reusable bag, or they may provide customers a credit of not less than 10 cents per reusable bag customers use. So it sounds like they can either charge 5 cents for a paper bag, for instance, or they can offer a 10-cent credit to customers just generally. But that if you come in, if I come into a facility that, establishment that does have a credit program, that I would have the option of essentially getting a free paper bag. And that was my understanding talking with you and others. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe I am wrong with that. And the way that this is written is that you as a customer either have to pay 5 cents or have to bring a reusable bag in. And then in which case you get a 10-cent credit. Is that the way that this, because I read it and it reads like an establishment either has to charge 5 cents or they have to have a 10-cent credit program, period.
Correct. So your original interpretation, and I believe that Councilmember Bender also shared that interpretation, are consistent with, I think, the intent of the authors.
So they could give
your store decides whether you're going to sell the bags or do the credit. And that's the program that they provide. And if you're doing the credit for the reusable bags, then you don't have to do the charge.
For paper bags, and give them out for free. Gotcha.
Yes. That's what people have called the loophole.
Yeah.
Councilmember Orsan.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Just to reply to the point that Councilmember Johnson made, you're not going to get a free paper bag. You're not going to get a free paper bag. Either if you bring in your own bag, you get a 10 cents credit. If you bring in your own bag, you get a 10 cents credit. If you want to purchase a paper bag, you have to pay 5 cents. So you don't get a free paper bag in any circumstance. You bring in your own bag, I have my own bag, I get a 10 cents credit for bringing my own bag.
Well, we could ask the attorney how he interprets the language, because I think there's a little bit of a different interpretation. So I think that Councilmember Johnson would favor your interpretation, it sounds like, and I'm fine with it too.
That's fine. That's how I interpret it.
But it talks about the retail establishment shall provide. Mr. Fussy, do you have a way of, and do you understand the paragraph we're talking about?
I do, and thank you, Mr. Chair. The way that I understood the intent of that, I guess, amendment to your draft was the way that Councilmember Johnson phrased it. And I think if that's not the intent, we should do some additional work to make that clear. But certainly my understanding of that language is that if the store has the 10 cent or more credit program, they can give away the paper bags.
Right. So, yeah. So, do you have an amendment you could offer us on the fly here?
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess that would depend on what the intent of the council
to align it with Councilmember Warsami's intent.
I could work on.
Why don't you look at that too? Well, otherwise we can certainly work on that before the council meeting. I think I wouldn't mind voting on the continuance or not, although my preference, I'll speak to that, I think is just to pass it today. I think one of the things by continuing it could create confusion in what actually got done and whether or not we were supporting it. And I think that the intention of the committee is pretty much unanimous that we need to do something here right along the lines of banning the use of plastic bags and creating some kind of a fee. It sounds like actually a fee structure for paper bags. And so I think the general premise of the ordinance is supported by the committee, and I'd like to move it forward for recommendation and not hold it up for 2 weeks, because I think that might give the wrong message to some of our folks in the community about what they have to do. So I'd like to see it go to the council on April 1st. That's my preference. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps a friendly amendment to Councilmember Johnson's motion would be to, rather than delay a full cycle, see what we could get done in the interim between now and the full city council meeting. And if by the full city council meeting there's not the proper amendments that have taken place, and to your point, we haven't fully dealt with the issue of the upstream costs associated with paper, then there would be the delay.
Certainly, and I would certainly be, and if we got to the council meeting, I'd certainly support holding it over if we hadn't resolved the language by then. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a good point. Councilmember Frye, I'm happy to withdraw the motion to hold it over for a council cycle. In the meantime, I absolutely will be working on this. One of the things, too, that I've floated as an idea was actually a way to utilize these fees to fund litter cleanup in the city and to ultimately make it less burdensome for consumers in the process. I can share the details with colleagues as I try to build support for this, but I just think about our MPCA example. If this is only 2% of the litter that's out there, what about the other 98%? We should have a vision for tackling that if we're ultimately going to be a zero waste city and as clean and green as we can be.
Okay, then why don't we just vote on the motion to continue it anyway? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? No. Nay. Okay, we won't continue it. And now let's see if there's any amendments that we want to attempt to make. I don't know, Mr. Fussy, if you have a good solution.
Well, Mr. Chair, it seems to me that if there's no consideration for the retailers giving the 10 cent per reusable bag credit, they could certainly do that of their own volition. And so I think to achieve the intent that you were speaking of, you just strike the language or provide customers a credit of not less than 10 cents per reusable bag customers use. I just don't believe that there's anything that retailers receive for that requirement under your, or that option under your intent. And there certainly would be free to continue with a credit program if they so choose. But if I'm understanding the intent of the committee and the chair, I don't think there's any reason to have that language in there. There's nothing that they achieve by offering that credit program under the ordinance.
So I will go ahead and make that motion and see where the sense of the group is. I'm not sure if that, I think that might be where we are now, where we're more moving in the direction of the straight fee. Councilmember, on that motion, Councilmember Frye?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess 2 points. If we wanted to separate the subject of the first sentence from the predicate of the second, we could just make it into 2 sentences. So it would be after compostable carryout bag or reusable bag provided to customers, period. And then we could say, additionally, additionally, vendors have the option of providing a 10-cent credit. Now, I don't, that's the way it would be worded if that was something you actually supported, and I don't know that that's something I support at all, given that I don't want a major influx of quote-unquote reusable polypropylene bags to enter the market stream.
So I'm worried that what you said would also leave it too confusing. If additionally they could, I suppose you said additionally they could.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I was providing an example of what we could do if that was the result that we intended, but I think that would ultimately be a bad result.
Oh, let's not, I don't. Just for those of you, I'm very comfortable if we just stay with the fee and we take that off and then we can let the stores do their own. I think that was an idea where we were reaching out to some stores that were already doing an incentive program, that they wouldn't have to change their way of operating business. So for the co-ops and for the Whole Foods, they're going to have to rethink it and move more in the direction of the Aldis, that here's a clear way of buying the bag and paying for the bag. So it will be a change and a transition, but we heard from the MPCA and a lot of people, they were concerned about it. So I'm fine striking that language. I don't know if Council Member Mike, okay. So any other discussion on that? All those in favor then of the motion to remove the phrase or provide customers a credit of not less than 10 cents.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I don't know if that's been moved, and I certainly am unable to move.
No, as you were finishing, I said I would move that, and I did. And right? Yes, thank you. Clerk agrees. So as I had moved, to strike that, and I think we all know what it is, but it's or provide customers a credit of not less than 10 cents per reusable bag. It's in section 225.930. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then on the entire motion, any other amendments or comments? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if the authors would indulge me with explaining why we're exempting carry-out food bags. I know when I've gone through the McDonald's before, not that I eat there often, but they've now started putting them in paper bags. They're extremely thin paper bags, and I wouldn't see why, if we're allowing reusable plastic, or not reusable plastic, biodegradable plastic, if that couldn't just be used in place for retailers. Is it an economics issue? Is it a cost issue? Is it a food or health safety issue? Is there a reason why that exemption is provided?
Well, it's provided if there's a food health safety issue. I think, speaking for myself anyway, I can't speak for my colleague on this, but maybe he shares this view. This is something that came up in a lot of discussions. It's also something that other cities have done. There was also the sense that this would really help some of the businesses, and it was a way we could phase in the adjustment if we saw that we wanted to look at this next time. I actually, at a lot of the business meetings, that seemed to be the biggest concern, that it seemed too challenging and too difficult for those takeout food operators. And I will tell you that they referred over and over again to a previous ordinance that you authored, is that saying we just got hit with that other one about our takeout food, and now I'm dealing with this cardboard stuff that's soaking in all the moisture, and I don't want to have to then have to come up with another plan when I haven't even really solved the first one. Could you just please, probably they want it forever, but some of them, could you please put this on the exempt list for, for us now? And it made a lot of people feel more comfortable. And the same thing happened with launders and dry cleaning too. I'll have to tell you that they were concerned about it. So some of those exemptions were in there. It almost felt like as part of a community-wide negotiation. And I will also tell you that at some of those meetings, some of the other businesses said, but you're going to get to the takeout bags eventually, right? We're going to have to deal with that. And so did residents. And I think they see that. But those exemptions were kind of trying to listen to people and be a little more sensitive, even though I know a lot of you here think this is ruthless government being not sensitive to your needs at all. And I apologize for that, but we're trying to move us in the right direction. And so keeping that exemption seems to be a way to do it a little more gently to some of the businesses. So I don't know, do you want to add anything to that, Councilmember Warsami? So I'd probably vote against that amendment if you wanted to make it at this point, but that's something we can certainly look at maybe later. Any other amendments or comments? Then I think we're ready to vote on the whole motion. The ordinance as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, one abstention. And so that motion carries. And now I'd like to move to the staff direction. And you should have it in front of you. I'll read the staff direction, and I want to put the words, I think just the word study in there, and we can see if we should fix that. But the staff direction says, directing solid waste and recycling, licenses and community services, regulatory services, and health staff to report back to the HECE committee no later than January 31st, 2017, with recommendations for study, implementation and enforcement of the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance. Such recommendations shall reflect the overall strategies laid out in the Zero Waste Policy Plan. So that's the staff direction, hoping adding the word study at the beginning will be clear enough and everybody who listened to the discussion to work on it. Any discussion on the staff direction? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And then I think we're actually done with this item. It took a little longer than I thought. I appreciate everybody's patience, and especially the patience of those other staff who are here for item number 2. And I think we'll take item number 2, and then we'll take item number 3, and hopefully it won't take too long, but we'll see how many people are here for this public hearing. So is Mr. Huff and Mr. Hanlon and Mr. Frame. Get all 3 of you. Welcome, and take a minute to get set up. We could probably stand up now and stretch a little. Committee members, what do you think? Have we ever done that at a council meeting? Got to get out of there soon? Okay. Well, hopefully we'll hold on to quorum. All right.
Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you. My name is Dan Huff, and I am the Director of Environmental Health with the Minneapolis Health Department. Today we're talking about pollution control annual bill fee restructure. I don't know why everyone laughed. It's a fee restructure. It's the most exciting thing yet. First of all, what is this fee? This is the Pollution Control Annual Registration, formerly known as the annual bill. This is a pollution impact fee. It's charged to a number of businesses, organizations, large housing units within the city. And what it does is it pays for the environmental services unit of the health department to follow up on complaints, to do investigations, and also to do proactive work with our businesses. So why the change? This is part of a citywide fee restructure effort. Council Vice President Glidden had asked us to reevaluate our fees a number of years ago in a comprehensive fee study. It's taken a lot of work, but this is part of that effort. It's also part of the mayor's effort on Business Made Simple. How do we ensure that our fees make the most sense for our businesses? So we really have 3 things that we feel are good outcomes from this. Number 1 is it aligns our fees to the services that we provide much more equitably. It also helps to incentivize pollution reduction while disincentivizing outdated practices that are most always more polluting practices. And the final thing, and this is one of the most significant changes here, is that it aligns the fees to the pollution impact, as opposed to having just a broad fee charged for, say, equipment. We're actually going to be charging for the amount of air pollution that large emitters release within the city. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Frame, our environmental engineer.
Good afternoon.
Chair Gordon and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Thomas Frame. I've been an employee with the City of Minneapolis Environmental Programs for over 20 years. I've been an inspector, a supervisor, and now an environmental engineer. I am a licensed professional engineer with the state of Minnesota. What you have before you today, you're looking at the hydrologic cycle. It illustrates how land, air, and water systems are interconnected. The latter, the last one, water, is what I will talk briefly about with you today. Some of you may have heard from your constituents about an item called a sanitary sewer discharge registration. It is a registration required for all non-residential users of the Minneapolis sewer system. Presently, there are 4,900 registrations. As a result of extensive work by the city, and in particular our Public Works Department, in the separation of sanitary sewers and storm drains, elimination of clear water connections, and combined sewer overflows, a large portion of the registration for domestic discharge connections is no longer relevant and will be eliminated. The outcome of this is that 3,976 businesses will no longer have the sanitary sewer registration. This will be the cafes, grocery stores, restaurants, retail storefronts on Central Avenue, on Lake Street, on Hennepin Avenue. We have a picture of wells and groundwater protection. When not maintained or properly constructed, wells are a conduit for surface water and soil contamination to enter the aquifers. Through 2 state delegated programs, Environmental Services is working to ensure that groundwater is safe to drink, that out-of-service wells and unsafe wells are sealed, that groundwater is available for commercial use, and that old wells do not impede redevelopment. The changes we are requesting will update the program to more accurately identify out-of-service wells and use commercial and water supply wells and create an inventory of wells that have received a sealing variance. Having this information readily available will provide opportunities to take advantage of cost share and grant programs that are occurring throughout the state. This will allow us the opportunity to seal up these at-risk wells as the money becomes available. Surface water protection. Stormwater runoff goes directly from the curb via the storm drains to the river, our lakes, and local creeks. In a continuing effort to improve the water quality of the stormwater runoff entering these surface water bodies, a registration for commercial and industrial stormwater runoff is being required. The new registration will facilitate implementation of the City of Minneapolis MPDS, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, municipal stormwater permit issued by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. A no exposure exclusion for a fee exemption will be in place for those facilities that have implemented programs and practices that have eliminated the impact from their operations to the stormwater runoff leaving their sites and entering the Minneapolis storm drain system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hanlon, get to hear about air now.
Chair Gordon, council members, my name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Manager for the Environmental Services Unit in the Health Department. Tom was talking a little bit about water quality and how the ordinance changes affect water quality and the services we provide there. I'll talk a little bit about air quality. And the first change that we have is fees for unhealthy business practices. There will be a $600 fee for dry cleaning and high emitting paint booths. So paint booths that aren't using waterborne paint, using high levels of solvents. And the example with dry cleaning that I would use is I was up here over a month ago, probably now, talking about our neighborhood air quality study that we did over a 2-year period. And perc that's used in dry cleaning, we found there were 99 exceedances over health risk values across the city. And of those 99 health exceedances, we found 27 hits outside of a dry cleaner. And we found 1,000 micrograms per cubic meter outside that dry cleaner when the health risk value is 2 micrograms per cubic meter. So that's outdoor air quality. Dry cleaners definitely have effect on our outdoor air quality, and PERC that's across the city, that we're finding across the city. In indoor air quality, we found that the dry cleaners that we work with to remove their PERC equipment, when they change that PERC equipment out, it dramatically improves the air quality inside the business and improves air quality for eliminating worker exposure to these chemicals. I'll talk a little bit about fees based on air pollution, but first I wanted to start with some research that's been done around air pollution and why the justification for a city like ourselves to be charging an air pollution fee. Experts agree that the cost of pollution in terms of human health and environmental concern is higher than what we currently charge. Any charges that we have in the state or federal charges or anything that a business might receive doesn't cover the charges, doesn't cover the costs, the environmental costs and the human health costs the externality costs that we receive. So that first item talks about those externality costs. It's a study that was done on a theoretical power plant built in Hennepin County. And there's two experts, one from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Dr. Nick Mueller, and then from the University of Minnesota, Dr. Julian Marshall. And they used their own scientific modeling to assess what the costs of one power plant would be. And based on different levels of pollution, came up with costs. And those costs are much more than what businesses are currently charged in terms of fees. And they're analyzing, in that chart, they're analyzing fine particulates, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides. The second one is pollution is not equal. If you look at externality costs of pollution, it can be 7 times. Research shows that it's 7 times higher in an urban area versus a rural area. And that makes sense. We live in a city where more people live close together. We have sources of pollution that are much closer together. We have major traffic routes that go through the city. And so those costs of pollution, any additional pollution has a much greater cost in terms of human health and environmental health. And in a study that was done in the 2013 State of Minnesota Public Utilities Commission report, they estimated that fine particulate pollution was, the externality cost of it was $792 per ton in rural areas and $6,291 a ton in urban areas, so almost 7 times the cost for fine particulates in terms of the cost. And then the third point I want to make is that there are immeasurable costs. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the Minnesota Department of Health, their representatives here today, put together a report, and there's an estimated 2,000 deaths and 400 hospitalizations in the Twin Cities every year due to air pollution. And so how do you measure those costs of those 2,000 additional deaths? So one of the first changes that we're making with the ordinance is amending an existing boiler and furnace charge. We're looking at hundreds of small sources across the city of boilers and furnaces, and I should add that diesel generators are also in that mix. Across the city, you're changing the rate that we charge from 400,000 BTU units to 300,000 BTU units. And to give a reference of that, a residential house has about an 80,000 BTU unit capacity. And to give an example of how these changes might affect a business, if they had a $1.2 million furnace BTU capacity, we would be charging them 3 units before. For that 400,000 BTU capacity, we'll now be charging them 4 units. And then there'll be charges for larger sources of air pollution. One of the first changes that we wanted to make was that we are currently charging registration fees to businesses for putting in pollution control equipment. So businesses that put in VOC scrubbers, if they put in fine particulate scrubbers that make our air cleaner, previously we were charging, or currently we are charging a fee for that equipment to go in. So with these changes, we'll no longer be charging. It'll be a 0 fee registration. We still want to know where those pieces of equipment are in Minneapolis, but we'll no longer be charging a fee for that. And then the second part is, instead of charging for the pollution control equipment, we're going to be charging for the pollution, how much pollution that they put out. $86 a ton for fine particulates, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and VOCs. And nitrogen oxide and VOCs, those are related to, as you may recall, we came very close to exceeding federal air quality standards. And those two chemicals combine to form ground level ozone, which contributes to that problem. There'll be a lesser charge for carbon monoxide, and then a greater charge. There's not a high volume of lead emissions in Minneapolis, but we want to create a disincentive for there to ever be a high volume of lead production. Along with these changes that we'll be charging to businesses, not only are we making these changes to benefit to be a cleaner, healthier city, but we also want them to be business friendly. So any business that comes forward with proactive projects, we built in exemptions to waive fees for the businesses that come forward with proactive projects that clean our air. There'll be a 10%, for any business that comes forward with a 10% reduction project over 500 pounds, it'll be a 2-year waive of emission fees. Any business that comes forward with a 25% of one emission category or 10% of all emission categories over 1 ton would be a 3-year waiving of fees. Any business that comes forward with a 25% of total emissions over 2 tons will be a 5-year waive of fees. And these, when you get into these categories, these are sort of stretch goals for a business. These would be really a great benefit to the city of Minneapolis to get these kinds of projects being done here. And then any business that could come forward with a 40% of total emissions over 4 tons would get a 10-year waive of all fees. And that would be quite a stretch for most businesses to come up with that kind of project, but we want that incentive to be there if they can. And then this goes along with, so those would be operational costs that the business would be able to use as an incentive. And then we also have capital costs with the Green Business Cost Share Program for projects up to $50,000, or we will cost share up to $50,000, up to a third of a project for capital costs. And in 2016, we'll be looking at energy assistance that relates to some of those boilers and furnace charges that I was talking about previously. So that's all I had. I want to thank Tom Frame, who did an amazing amount of work getting a lot of these registration fees together. Chakavi Moa, if he's still here someplace, who runs our pollution control program. Dan Huff for his leadership. Gretchen Musicant for letting us think outside the box and really come up with ways that we can think innovatively about these types of programs. The guests that have been invited here today, thank you for taking a lot of time to come here today. Appreciate it. Chair Gordon, council members, and especially Councilmember Fry for authoring this ordinance change.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions here. I think a lot of us up here might be a little bit talked out, but we are going to open the public hearing and give those of you that came a chance to speak briefly. And I'm going to aim to try to get done by 4:30, committee members, maybe a little earlier, but we have one other item we have to continue to. So I'll open the public hearing for this, and I'll ask Robert Moffett to step forward first, please.
Welcome. Thank you, Chairman Gordon, members of the committee. I am Robert Moffett. I'm a spokesperson for the American Lung Association in Minnesota. Air pollution is a primary concern for us. We take it very seriously. We believe it is a public health issue, and we strongly support measures that provide strong incentives for local businesses to be cleaner. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Sarah Goodspeed.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Gordon and the rest of the committee. My name is Sarah Goodspeed. I'm a policy analyst with the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy based here in Minneapolis. We're a regional organization that focuses on policy research and education around comprehensively improving the environmental health of our most overburdened communities. And we just heard many hours of testimony in support of our first agenda item. And while this second one is a little less glamorous and familiar, I think it nonetheless has a very similar goal of reducing pollution at the source. And so we are commenting today in support of the fee restructuring before the City Council. Among other pollutants of particular significance is that these fees will begin to address the fine particulate matter and the volatile organic compounds emitted by facilities in our own communities. The Minnesota Department of Health has found that in Minneapolis, exposure to particulate matter is linked to numerous adverse health conditions such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, reduced lung function, irregular heartbeat, heart attack, and premature death. The long-term impact of exposure to volatile organic compounds, such as that experienced by workers at the impacted facilities and neighboring community members, includes the increased risk of cancer, liver damage, kidney damage, and damage to the central nervous system. Numerous state and national studies confirm that this air pollution and its negative health impacts are not experienced equally across geography and demographics in Minneapolis, but actually cause greater damage to already overburdened communities within our cities. In the Twin Cities alone, The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and Minnesota Department of Health have confirmed that fine particle pollution caused an estimated 2,152 deaths, 321 hospitalizations for heart and lung conditions, and 402 emergency department visits for asthma. And this was particularly significant for elderly people, people of color, and low-income people. In addition, min-risk modeling by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency shows significant hotspots of elevated cancer risks in Minneapolis due to exposure to the cumulative impacts of air pollution, largely in low-income communities of color and indigenous communities. Additionally, asthma hospitalization rates in children in Minneapolis were almost 50% higher than the national average. This has a broader community impact, such as school attendance, missed parent workdays, and related ongoing challenges. These communities are overburdened, experiencing the legacy of historical pollution and the cumulative impact from highways, local traffic, and industrial facilities positioned within our city. We also know that climate change will directly affect local air quality by altering chemical reaction rates, as well as affecting the dispersion and deposition of air pollutants. Therefore, an investment by the city in proactively improving air quality protects communities today, as well as acting as an adaptive strategy towards the impacts of climate change. These fee changes will help tie the costs of pollution directly to the sources of that pollution, rather than passing those costs on to our health and other community impacts. It uses an economic mechanism to proactively protect workers and neighboring communities' health, rewarding positive actions that improve public health. These types of voluntary market incentives are part of what is needed to address the critical problem, in addition to future regulations to continue reducing air pollution in our city. This policy is a positive direction forward for the city of Minneapolis to protect our most vulnerable communities from air pollution and to protect air quality for all of our residents in a responsible manner. So we submit this testimony in support of the proposed fee changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Laura Babcock.
Good afternoon, Chairman and council members. My name is Laura Babcock, and I am the director of the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program at the University of Minnesota. MNTAP is a 100% grant-funded program at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences. Our mission is to provide no-cost technical assistance to help Minnesota businesses to identify and implement cost-effective strategies for pollution prevention, energy efficiency, water conservation. All of these things, when combined, generally provide the business with additional benefits of cost savings. In my role at MNTAP, I have seen that business owners and managers generally want to reduce waste in their operations. And waste, one of those forms of waste is what we tend to emit into the air. Unfortunately, business owners are very, very busy, or fortunately, they're very, very busy running their businesses and have very little time or staff to identify, test, and implement source reduction options on their own. The program that is being proposed by the City of Minneapolis is proactive in that it encourages links to external technical assistance resources and adds a very positive reinforcement for source reduction opportunities and implementation of those opportunities to ultimately reduce emissions across the entire city and ultimately the state and serve as a model for our state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker listed is Carol Hughes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for staying so long.
Okay, my name is Carol Hughes, and I own Alpha Engineering. It's a very small company. We do a lot of repair work, dies, axle repairs, stuff like that. And we have been listed as a #1 since the inception of this these programs. And I guess I'm just feeling a little anxious, because the restrictions and the changes are confusing in some ways, but it also puts a lot of stress on the people who are running the business, like me. And I guess I would like a little bit more clarification as to how they are going to rate my business, which I have a sink and a toilet, and that's it. So, I don't know exactly how that rate is going to change. And I would really like to have a little bit more information on that. So, thank you very much, and I'm totally confused on the plastic bags.
Well, thank you very much. And if you have, I'm assuming you haven't had an opportunity to sit down with staff and kind of discuss your particular property, and maybe you could actually do so before you leave today, because we have. Okay, well, let's. Can we make sure somebody talks to her afterwards? Thank you so much. So, or now if she has to leave. And last is Alan Campbell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Gordon, members of the council. I'm a Minneapolis resident speaking this afternoon in behalf of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club supports the proposed changes to annual pollution control billing fees, which would make fees more proportionate to the true costs of pollution, thus incentivizing pollution reduction. We are most pleased to see that the proposed changes would implement more appropriate fees on large-scale emitters of pollutants that are most damaging to health, especially to health in overburdened communities. Pollutants such as sulfur and nitrogen oxides, fine particulates and VOCs, while no longer charging a fee for use of pollution control technologies. The temporary exemption of businesses that submit a voluntary emission reduction project is also a major positive. We view these changes as a good first step. Future changes to impact fees that could also be considered would be to work toward measuring and factoring in the external costs of CO2 emissions to create a stronger incentive to reduce the emissions that are most harmful in contributing to climate change. Such a modification should be considered and could be done keeping the fee structure in a revenue neutral manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who is here to speak on this but didn't sign up? Welcome. Maybe you can state your name for us.
Good afternoon. My name is James Kelly, and I'm a manager in the Environmental Health Division at the Minnesota Department of Health. And I just wanted to say briefly, you heard a little bit about the report that we produced with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency last year called Life and Breath that really did highlight, as Patrick put it, the immeasurable costs of pollution. That is the cost that can contribute to in actual premature deaths related to air pollution and the cost of asthma. I just wanted to reiterate how important that is and to keep in mind, as well as the fact, as you've heard, that the burdens that are borne as a result of air pollution are disproportionately felt in communities that are least able to deal with it. So I think it's very important that actions that can be taken to reduce the levels of air pollutants in our communities are very helpful from a public health standpoint. And that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate that. And seeing nobody else coming forward, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilmember Frye, would you like to make the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would, and I'll just speak briefly to it. These approximately 4 issues that are being brought forward right now certainly are not all that sexy, but I think have a major impact on our environment ultimately. I want to give a huge thanks to Tom Frame, to Dan Huff, and Patrick Hanlon for quite a bit of work that they've done on this that it really dates back to the beginning of my time on the council even. You guys have been working on this for years right now, and once you brought it forward to my desk, it was at a point where it was very much a final draft. So that work is hugely appreciated. Thank you. And some of these items are significant changes. Others are practical improvements to the situation that we already have in place. So whether it's aligning fees to service, or my favorite one, which is paying by emissions rather than the emission-controlled device. That just makes sense. I mean, if someone's got an emission-controlled device, that's a good thing. Why are we charging them because of that device? We should be charging them based on the particulate matter that it has a negative impact to the health of our residents in the city. And then finally, simply the having some further regulation around PERC. So thank you. We're really proud to move this forward, and I certainly encourage my colleagues to vote in favor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank staff for their work on this, everyone else, and Councilmember Fry. I think it's a great change.
We all share that, I think, as well. Can't speak for you all, though, but seeing no comments or discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, that motion carries then. And now we have one last item for us, and this is the emergency shelter ordinance, which the ordinance language isn't quite ready yet. And so I would like to open the public hearing on it in case there's anybody here to speak to it. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and I will make a motion to continue this hearing till May 16, 2016. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. And then seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.